weather patterns, devastating floods, and wildfires have become the daily news, and they are happening fast. The latest IPCC report has also unequivocally blamed us, human beings, for these catastrophes, warning us that if we do not stop now, it will get worse. That said, we still have a window to course correct. The UN report states that we still have time to minimize climate change by taking tough measures, and this cannot be done alone. Here, it is important to collaborate and take robust actions to make our planet greener. So, this partnership between AB InBev and Network 18, which began in January of 2021, is a step in that direction. The Sustainability 100 Plus Shaping a Better World was launched to incite collective action and responsibility from stakeholders and persuade policymakers, corporations, and individuals to take up sustainability on a war footing to make this planet livable for another 100 plus years. To pursue this dream and vision, the Sustainability 100 Plus initiative brought together policymakers, business leaders, climate experts, innovators, and academics to tackle the biggest challenge of climate change. And it also drove meaningful positive change under four focus areas: smart agriculture, water stewardship, circular packaging, and climate action. Through the launch of the Sustainability 100 Plus platform, we have paved the way to working together and accelerating India's march towards achieving its SDG goals. During our discussions, ministers from both the central as well as state governments, including Prakash Javadekar, Nitin Gadkari, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, and policymakers like Amitabh Kant, Ajoy Mehta, Valsa Nair, shed light on the government's initiatives and achievements. We successfully drove discussions towards identifying the gaps and potential areas for action. Still, a lot more needs to be done. The possibility to broaden the horizon remains by including more stakeholders, partners, and champions. This is what lies in the next phase. We will carry forward this partnership and continue to encourage and highlight the torchbearers of sustainability, and also highlight what we must do to make the planet sustainable, healthy, and livable for all.
Climate change isn't a phenomenon of the future. It's happening now, and it's happening fast. The only way to slow down this catastrophe is to initiate conversations that turn into sustainable actions. Actions that could save the world. The Sustainability 100 Plus was initiated with one goal: to invoke the importance of sustainability that gets India closer to its SDGs. Our journey took us through 4 prominent states. We had endless conversations with experts and sustainability champions. The Sustainability 100 Plus logo represents the essence of our 4 key pillars: climate action, smart agriculture, circular packaging, and water stewardship. These core pillars and hundreds of concerning topics represented through our emblem were manifested through various roundtables, webinars, and masterclasses that led to actionable conversations. But these conversations are incomplete without your participation, because you are the bigger part of this change. Join us for the latest edition of Sustainability 100 Plus. Let's come together at a distance to shape a better world.
Welcome to the Sustainability 100 Plus Summit. Before we kick off the event today, this is a good time to recap the year on the back of what we've been able to do together on the Sustainability 100 Plus along with AB InBev. We've had several important sessions over the course of the last several weeks, and of course several important sessions laid out even today. The CEO of the Niti Aayog, Amitabh Kant, will join us shortly, but for now it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome Kartikeya Sharma, President, India and Southeast Asia at AB InBev. He joins us to share his insights and learnings for 2021. Thanks very much, Kartikeya. Good to have you join us here. The Season 1 of Sustainability 100 Plus, Shaping a Better World, it has inspired all of us here at Network 18, at CNBC TV 18. And of course, we're hoping that it will inspire others to do better when it comes to the issue of sustainability and climate change. Take me through what the experience has been like for you. Why did you believe that this collaboration was the need of the hour?
Well, great to be speaking to you again as well, Shreen. It seems like it was yesterday, but now 7 months ago we kicked off this particular platform with a great deal of hope and optimism. And if there's one word that sums up how this experience has really panned out, it is inspirational. The many different stakeholders who've volunteered their time to come speak on topics that almost seem like the most relevant conversation for any of us to be having today, which is around all things climate change, all things, of course, environment, captured under sustainability, but not limited to it, because we do, of course, look at sustainability as a very important peg in a much larger ESG agenda. I would say that every objective we had set out for ourselves in collaboration with you and the network has in fact panned out. And we're only excited about what edition 2 may hold for us, because we want to make this much more bigger, make the conversations even more bolder, and of course infuse a greater sense of urgency than what we've already been seen and been quite excited and inspired about. So
Oh,
great experience overall.
well, we look forward to season 2, and we do share your enthusiasm and excitement. But Karthike, for AB InBev, sustainability is your business strategy, and that drives the business decisions that you take. But through the last 7 months, through the course of the conversations that we've had on the program with various stakeholders, government organizations, policymakers, NGOs, investors, take me through what some of the key learnings have been, some of the key messages that you take away from the conversations that we've had.
Sure. Well, for starters, I do at times have had to hold myself back because the excitement of being able to see a panel live, and I've joined most of them, to hear, how all the stakeholders that you just called out are representing their thinking by way of their thoughts, ideas, and even in some cases commitments. It's been remarkable that this one common idea or thread that has stitched together pretty much every stakeholder that we've engaged on this platform is a sense of urgency. Everybody understands that while we've been conversing a great deal through many different platforms, local as well as global, here in India, whether it's the government, whether these are think tanks or corporate entities, everybody shares the same sense of urgency that the need to move and the need to indulge in greater, wider, and more deeper action is now. We can't stand on ceremony here and continue to pontificate over where some of our initiatives might take us. I think people have, in many cases, and that's why I use the word inspired as a great way to sum up our assessment of how these interactions have gone. Many people have actually drawn a line in the sand, quite like AB InBev, and said by 2025 we'd actually commit to A, B, and C along the pillars of circular packaging or water stewardship or climate action or what have you. And complementing the sense of urgency is also this idea that everybody, along with feeling that dire need to step up, also understands this is not somebody going at it alone. So collaboration is a great adjoining theme that has emerged. There is a confluence of wanting to innovate, wanting to expand on each other's innovations. There have been many conversations that have carried on after the dialogues as well. Organizations reaching out to each other, organizations wanting to learn from each other, organizations wanting to see how they can be connected to other organizations. And when we spoke about the objective of these dialogues being that of giving a platform to thinkers and doers, I think it's a tick and tick, because collaboration with a high sense of urgency has emerged as the order of the day.
We will talk about future collaborations in just a second, Karthike, but let's talk about the doing. And let me talk to you about what AB InBev has been doing on the ESG front. You talked to us about water stewardship. You talked to us about doing stuff to ensure that there is a circular economy that takes shape here in India as well. Now, you've been working with individual state governments on that front. What have been some of the lessons through your collaboration with state governments to take some of these ideas forward?
One, a great deal of openness. And I like your question a great deal because it allows us, I think, a little more to reflect on oftentimes a area of criticism, if you like, that the government tends to go at it alone, and involvement and engagement of other stakeholders may not be as easy and may not fit into the operating style that corporations may have. But our experience has been different. And I'll cite a few examples. If I think about Corona, one of our flagship global brands, picking up the cause, which is, as we put it, at the heart and soul of what the brand stands for, which is a lifestyle or experience that almost involves all things the beach and the seas. Corona was involved in cleaning up over a period of 1 year beaches across Bombay. We cleared out about 200,000 kgs of waste, and the involvement from the government was remarkable. The amount of openness to collaborate, a theme I spoke of that has been sort of the prevailing idea through these dialogues, was a remarkable booster for us to know that there's a great deal of openness, that the government would be willing to collaborate on initiatives that they themselves see as not being something they can drive on their own. The other thing that comes to mind is also what we've been doing with all things water and water stewardship. We know sanitation is one topic. We know recharging the water that organizations use is another. We also know access is a critical dilemma that the government is facing with. Because while people have access to water, it may not be sanitized. If the water is sanitized, they don't have access in plenty. And again, when I think back to our initiatives here in Karnataka, in Maharashtra, even in Telangana, in and around the communities in which we operate in, we've always found the government to be a very willing stakeholder to engage and almost empower us to say, well, this challenge, you guys go at it and address it. Uh, Engagement with farmers up here in the north, particularly in Punjab and Haryana, as we were going through the COVID pandemic. Prices we had communicated and prices we lived up to, despite variability in demand, again supported entirely by the government, and proactive reach and engagement by both the governments in Haryana as well as in Punjab, again is testament to the fact that if there is initiative and there's a willingness to adapt an operating style, I think the government is willing to take a few steps forward as well. And then you have a great many facilitators and fantastic organizations. I think about Kisan Hub for all things smart agriculture. I think about WaterAid when it comes to everything related to our water initiatives. I think about an amazing startup like FreightFox, which actually came through our Innovation Accelerator program for all things green logistics. The partners are there. The interaction between the government and corporations, I think, is only going to get better and better as the months and years roll by.
Well, that's good to hear that the collaboration with various state governments, and you named several of them working well on the ground. But let's talk about the road ahead. You just spoke to us about the need for greater collaboration. And let me ask you that in the context of the need to replicate some of these models at scale across the country. Now, what could be the next phase in terms of tie-ups, in terms of partnerships, in terms of collaboration, in terms of fostering and nurturing innovation?
That's a great question. And we've been scratching our head with that because we don't quite know where to start. This is like a few children sitting around with, those marker pens in a room that has whiteboards all over. And we've been trying to restrain our enthusiasm to make sure that it's targeted and well thought out. So the short answer is we looked at 4 or 5 states that were indeed leading on the delivery of SDG goals. Their composite scores were all in the range of 60 to 70. This is namely Telangana, Maharashtra, and Karnataka, with Haryana following suit. But where we see a great deal of excitement are states like Uttar Pradesh. Where we see a great deal of excitement are states like Punjab, because they're large states. They're states that have a great deal of challenges. I mean, if you think back to Punjab and the challenges with groundwater, similar challenges in Haryana. Of course, it's fairly topical now, but it's not just because it's topical, but because farmers and all things agriculture is ingrained in the economic ecosystem of these states, that we feel states like Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab A state like West Bengal, for example, when it comes to some of our initiatives related to circular packaging, because there's a very thriving manufacturing ecosystem of all things packaging out there, are one dimension of expansion, so involve more states. The second part of scale, and I like your question a great deal because it also challenges us to think about what scale means in a context of a country as large as India with the kind of challenges we have, is to actually take water, take smart agriculture, take climate as three for starters. As far as circular packaging is concerned, our products and the larger ecosystem involving many other corporations has already gained a great deal of momentum. So I don't intend to highlight three over the fourth, but we feel comfortable with the kind of scale we think we can achieve on packaging. But climate action, water stewardship, and smart agriculture, we're resetting our own goals and ambitions to see how we can accelerate the timeline on which we wanted to deliver on our sustainability commitments by at least 12 to 18 months. Now, what that involves is embracing our accelerator programs and innovation hubs to bring together even more breakthrough organizations who are embracing even more disruptive technologies to accelerate momentum towards the kind of scale that will solve these problems. Else, we run the risk of very, very low levels of incrementality that would still be a step in the right direction, but nowhere close to the urgency that I think all of us share as one human race. So, towards that end, innovation, disruption, a greater empaneling of states beyond the ones that we engaged just come to mind as a few areas that I think we can deliver on. Not to mention continuing to have partners like yourselves, because the engagement with you and the larger team has been nothing short of phenomenal as well.
Well, we have enjoyed every minute of this partnership, and we hope that we will be able to replicate the success that we've seen over the season one when we do, of course, launch season two. But Karthikeya, you spoke about the need for exponential change and not incremental change, given the
Mhm.
sense of urgency as well as how large the problem is that we're faced with today. In that context, on what you're doing on the accelerator side, what you're doing on the side of being able to foster partnerships with startups. What can we expect there, and how excited are you about that story shaping up?
Extremely. As I said, technology and technology that can disrupt at scale is going to be the name of the game. We spoke in an interaction I had with Mr. Kant, who I know is going to be speaking on this topic as well as Mr. Bagla from Invest India, phenomenal stakeholders to be engaging with. And when we spoke about the kind of initiatives we are undertaking, almost in unison, the kind of response that comes through is how can we plug into a much larger ecosystem? So towards that end, when we think about our accelerator program and innovation hubs, there is a great deal already happening by the Government of India centrally. And we're seeking out opportunities on how we can plug our programs into theirs so that the reach of the kind of organizations and the number of organizations we can get to can only scale and scale exponentially. There is no dearth of the kind of ideas we're seeing come through. We just need to ensure they're all plugged into a much larger ecosystem so that when we decide to invest and we decide to give fairly large problems to these organizations and are willing to put our money where our mouth is, we'll start to see the magic play out. And so towards that end, I'm sorry, the secret sauce, of course, is collaboration. But I think the ingredient within that secret sauce, I'm getting a little pedantic here with my analogy, is indeed technology. And we are seeing that with these organizations. So I do hope that come our second edition, we can be looking at AB InBev's accelerator program as well as innovation hub plugged into the much larger central government accelerator and innovation programs to be able to give us a much larger output as a result.
Well, Karthik, we look forward to that, and may the magic continue. That is our hope. But thanks very much for recapping and taking us through the efforts made so far, and more importantly, sketching out for us what the road ahead looks like. Well, we've been promising you lots, and we do have lots more. Amitabh Kant, the CEO of Niti Aayog, is ready to join us now with how he sees this story panning out and what the government is likely to do much more of in its efforts to nurture the sustainability dialogue. We'll also be back with Jan Krapps, Atul Bagai, and Sam Kimmins as we discuss embedding sustainability in corporate goals and achieving the SDGs. But for now, let's go across to Mr. Kant. Mr. Kant, go ahead, sir.
The Sustainable Development Goal Framework, adopted by 193 countries in 2015, has redefined development policies and government priorities across the world. India, together with the world, has marched into the decade of action. With less than 10 years left to achieve the global goals, nations are accelerating the design and implementation of sustainable solutions to the world's biggest challenges, ranging from poverty and gender inequality to climate change. Our commitment to sustainable development goals has only strengthened in the wake of COVID-19 global pandemic and amidst our efforts to chart a completely new course of development for the post-pandemic future. In December 2018, with the release of the first edition of the SDG India Index and Dashboard, we developed a comprehensive policy tool to capture the progress on the SDGs, considering the complexity of the interlinked global goals and their reflection in our national priorities. Now in its third year, the index has been comprehensively documenting and ranking the progress made by states and union territories towards achieving the SDGs. The country's score on 100 has improved from 57 in 2018-19 and 60 in 2019-20 to 66 in 2020 and 21. Exemplary countrywide performance on Goal 6, clean water and sanitation, and Goal 7, affordable and clean energy in all the states and union territories, has significantly contributed to this improvement. The index has reshaped the SDG framework adoption and localization discourse in the country. It has resulted in states and union territories instituting monitoring systems and preparing development strategies aligned to the goals of the 2030 agenda, which are customized to the local and hyperlocal context. Through the localization efforts and the index, and now the country's first district level SDG index for the 8 northeastern states, we continuously foster cooperative and competitive federalism both for our states and union territories and also for our districts. Our goal is to ensure that the fruits of India's progress and development percolate to each of its 1.3 billion citizens, leaving no one behind. States and union territories play a crucial role in localizing the SDGs. There are many exemplary interventions which have taken place at that level, including the institution of SDG-focused units embedded in the planning and finance departments of states, thematic working groups headed by senior officials, and periodic review by the political leadership. This has engendered a whole of government approach towards the SDGs with both horizontal and vertical convergence across multiple government departments. The pandemic and its multifarious impacts have further intensified the endorsement of this approach, which appreciates the interlinked nature of the SDGs. This cross-sectoral approach prominently features in our national agenda and flagship programs. While governments are key actors in the journey towards achieving the ambitious targets under the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development, the global goals cannot be realized through efforts of the government alone. Civil society and the private sector have a very well acknowledged role which is embedded in the agenda itself. During the formulation of the SDGs, civil society organizations were acknowledged and recognized not only as a conduit for the voices of the most vulnerable, but also for their operational capability as localizers of the SDGs. Their role is unique in a country like India, where geographic and socioeconomic specificities and diversity require a highly localized approach towards development. The partnership between CSOs and community organizations and the government plays a very vital role in working towards ensuring that no one is left behind. Similarly, as an engine for growth and innovation, the private sector and private sector investments is crucial in galvanizing the market forces. It is well understood that the SDGs will require the mobilization of domestic and international private financing as a complement to public sector resources. In fact, as with all development goals, financing is crucial to the progress and mobilization of all types and sources of capital, is fundamental to complement the provision of scaled-up public investments made by governments at all levels. Increasingly, private sector investors are seeking investments that meet both financial objectives and non-financial objectives. These investment strategies include environmental, social, and governance (ESG) investments, responsible investments, impact investments, and green finance. While different in mandate and scope, these investment strategies aim to achieve positive social, environmental, or developmental outcomes in addition to financial returns. The Indian markets have seen considerable momentum in the sustainable finance sector over the last few years. This has been especially true with the onset of COVID-19 and particularly in ESG conscious investments. We are also witnessing corporate actions which go beyond corporate social responsibility activities. Companies have begun adopting the SDGs in their core operations and procurement with the aim of embedding environmentally sustainable and socially conscious practices in the entirety of the value chain. This is being guided by business responsibility and sustainability reporting frameworks, market demand for compliance with sustainability standards and certifications, and growing consumer awareness and consciousness. In this journey of ours, especially in expansion of social infrastructure and climate action, technology and innovation have and will continue to play the crucial disruptive role. For the vibrant democracy of our country and its demography, technological innovations have expanded access to knowledge, bolstered employment opportunities, and enabled reaching out to the farthest behind. Globally as well, the lower carbon emission pathway envisaged for the planet is significantly contingent on adoption of innovative and new technology. We must remind ourselves that we do not have the luxury of time. We have just under 10 years ahead of us to achieve the goals and targets we have set together as one community. A true whole of society effort towards realizing the SDGs, which includes everyone, governments, civil society and private sector, and citizens, is the need of the hour. We cannot leave anyone behind in this endeavor. We must remind ourselves that our efforts in the coming years will determine the kind of planet our children, their children, and generations to come will be born into, and the quality of life they will inherit. Our actions in this decade will have a very, very strong bearing on our future generations, their scope of aspirations and ambitions. This alone should motivate us to do our best. My good wishes and all the best to Sustainability 100 Plus. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
We are all in the middle of a climate threat. Increasing carbon emissions and human activities which are detrimental to the environment have fast-tracked climate change. Record-breaking temperatures, melting glaciers, rising sea levels, erratic weather patterns, devastating floods and wildfires have become the daily news, and they are happening fast. The latest IPCC report has also unequivocally blamed us, human beings, for these catastrophes, warning us that if we do not stop now, it will get worse. That said, we still have a window to course correct. The UN report states that we still have time to minimize climate change by taking tough measures, and this cannot be done alone. Here, it is important to collaborate and take robust actions to make our planet greener. So this partnership between AB InBev and Network18, which began in January of 2021, is a step in that direction. The Sustainability 100 Plus Shaping a Better World was launched to incite collective action and responsibility from stakeholders and persuade policymakers, corporations, and individuals to take up sustainability on a war footing to make this planet livable for another 100 plus years. To pursue this dream and vision, the Sustainability 100 Plus initiative brought together policymakers, business leaders, climate experts, innovators, and academics to tackle the biggest challenge of climate change. And it also drove meaningful positive change under 4 focus areas: smart agriculture, water stewardship, circular packaging, and climate action. Through the launch of the Sustainability 100 Plus platform, we have paved the way to working together and accelerating India's march towards achieving its SDG goals. During our discussions, ministers from both the central as well as state governments, including Prakash Javadekar, Nitin Gadkari, Gajendra Singh Shekhawat, and policymakers like Amitabh Kant, Ajoy Mehta, Valsa Nair, shed light on the government's initiatives and achievements. We successfully drove discussions towards identifying the gaps and potential areas for action. Still, a lot more needs to be done. The possibility to broaden the horizon remains by including more stakeholders, partners, and champions. This is what lies in the next phase. We will carry forward this partnership and continue to encourage and highlight the torchbearers of sustainability and also highlight what we must do to make the planet sustainable, healthy, and livable for all. Joining us now on this very special conversation to talk about what corporations, policymakers, governments, and the citizens across the world can do to try and ensure that we don't go into this catastrophic scenario that is being painted is Sam Kimmins, the head of RE100 at the Climate Group, Atul Bagai, the head of the UN Environment Programme India office, and Jan Kraps, the Chief Executive Officer and Co-Chair at Budweiser Brewing Company in the Asia Pacific region. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Jan, let me start by talking to you about the role that corporations can actually play. And while we have for many, many years talked about the need for a triple bottom line approach for stakeholder capitalism to actually put people and the planet and converge that with the corporation's outlook for profit, we're only now starting to see more being done on that front, especially as ESG norms and ESG metrics start to guide decisions that are being taken in the boardroom. But AB InBev has been one of the champions taking this forward as part of not just your sustainability strategy, but making sure that your sustainability strategy is in fact your business strategy. So take us through what you've been able to do.
Hi, Shireen. Thanks for having me. You're right. I think you said it well, right? Sustainability, we don't see it as part of our strategy. Sustainability is our business. In the end, we are in the communities in which we operate. We source our ingredients locally. We brew locally. We sell to the consumers in our community. And we see we have an important role to play to really have a positive impact on the environment. So when we talk about sustainability, we translate it since 2018. We translate it in hard commitments that we took externally. And we call it our 2025 sustainability goals. And we picked 4 goals that are very concrete, that are very close to our business, because we talk about smart agriculture, we talk about water stewardship, we took commitments on circular packaging, and we took commitments on climate action. And we actually made them very concrete also for our colleagues and our partners. For example, in India, we work with more than 1,200 farmers for barley. So we help them, upskilling them, letting them work with the right seeds and the right barley that we then commit to buy from them, so that we can also financially empower them for the future. When we look at water, of course, in India is a big topic. We are in 5 locations where there is water scarcity. And so we take very concrete actions to do water recharge stations. We invest around our breweries so that we don't only focus on reducing the water usage in our brewery, but we also invest in water collection outside the brewery, so we can give back any water that we use to brew our beers. In packaging, we're quite advanced as well. We have 98% of our glass bottles are returnable. And actually, the glass bottles themselves are made from more than 1/3 recycled content already today, and we improve that year after year. And when we look at climate action, also there, we focus on using renewable electricity. So we're not quite at RE100 yet, like Sam, but we're at RE70, and we are working to advance every year the number of breweries that we make progress. We're installing solar panels. We work with PPAs so we can invest outside of the breweries as well to generate renewable electricity by committing to purchasing this electricity in our operations.
Yeah, and you talked about how you have goals that you've listed down for the corporation that you hope to achieve by 2025. Where do things currently stand, and has the pandemic shifted some of those goals a little further out?
Not really further out. I would almost say on the opposite. I think the pandemic has accelerated the understanding of the broader public that something needs to happen. Not only the pandemic, but I'm sure you also follow the climate change and different levels of impact in different parts of the world, where we see more floodings, we see extreme heat, we see very strange nature phenomena, which I think lets consumers better understand that, this really needs to change and more people need to take action. And people will need to work together with different organizations, different businesses, but also different individuals to contribute and to change how the world works today, and to have a more long-term perspective and invest in a sustainable future. So if anything, I think it increased consumers' understanding, and it increased the actionability of both governments, companies, and individual communities.
Well, let me take that point across to Sam. And Sam, what we have seen on account of the disruption brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic is that the progress that we were making on many of the sustainable development goals, there has been a degree of deceleration, or perhaps we have slipped back. For instance, when we talk about poverty alleviation, the progress that we made over the last 2 decades, that has been stalled. In fact, we've taken a step back there. What has the disruption meant in terms of the SDGs? And more importantly, as governments now start to put their focus back on a greener recovery, on a cleaner recovery, what do you foresee the priorities are likely to be?
So I think it's one of the many tragedies of COVID is the catastrophic impact it's had on the poverty agenda, the equality agenda, etc. It really has had some devastating impacts, and we need to look at how we grow in order that we have equal growth and fair growth. But an area where COVID doesn't appear to have impacted too heavily is the growth of renewable power. So the organization, the campaign that I run, RE100, led by the Climate Group with CDP, brings together 335 global corporates, including Budweiser, all committed to 100% renewable electricity. And they're doing that not just because it makes environmental sense, they're doing it because it makes business sense. And we've actually seen unprecedented growth in our numbers over the past year. So actually, we've not seen a dent, we've actually seen growth during COVID.
Yes, the market is certainly favoring renewable electricity. In fact, a country like India has very aggressive renewable energy targets, and we are hoping that that we will see large-scale investments coming in into the renewable energy segment. But in the interim, Mr. Bagai, if I could come to you, there are challenges in being able to achieve those targets, and those are audacious goals that India has set forward as far as renewable energy is concerned. But we continue to be dependent on fossil fuel. We continue to be dependent on thermal energy, on coal at this point in time. In the interim, as we make the journey from where we currently are to where we need to be, what do you believe we need to be mindful of? What kind of interventions will policymakers need to put in place?
Thanks, Shireen. And I think you've raised a very pertinent point, which is now being discussed, not only at a level of the Indian government, but I think globally. And certainly the dependence on fossil fuels is something that is going to be there for the next couple of decades, to say the least. And the governments certainly are looking at renewables. As you rightly said, India has such a ambitious target of 450 gigawatts, which is something that puts India in a very unique position. But I think while that target is going to be met in the next 20 years or so, the dependence on fossil fuels is certainly going to be there. But there are certain developments that are taking place globally and in India that gives us a ray of hope. Meaning 2018 was the very first year when the global investments in renewables was more than the investments in the fossil fuels. And that's a very happy development that happened in 2018, and we are hoping that trend certainly continues. I would certainly also say that access to energy and also in terms of the transitioning to a fossil fuel free energy scenario, the governments are very mindful of the fact that the shift to renewables does not harm the availability of energy or electricity to the vulnerable parts of the society and to the urban areas or the rural areas. And there needs to be some more innovation and technology development in the renewables, especially in the battery storage area, which a technology that should be made available to developing countries, which will at least give a seamless transition from fossil fuels to renewables. But certainly, I think from an India perspective, the policy prescriptions are very positive in terms of moving to renewables. But it is something that is going to take another couple of decades, to say the least, before we can say that, yes, we've shifted to fossil fuel-less electricity generation.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And while 450 gigawatts is the target set out by the Indian government, we're a far distance away from that currently. But Sam, to the point that was being made there by Mr. Bagai, the need of the hour is to ensure that there is access to these technologies and that these technologies become affordable as well. While we have seen battery costs, for instance, come down, and that could help pave the way for greater electric vehicle penetration in developing markets like India. What more needs to be done from a collaboration perspective, industry to industry, private sector to private sector collaboration, government to government collaboration, to just ensure accessibility and affordability of these technologies?
With regard to renewable electricity, the cost of solar has dropped by around 80% over the past 10 years. The cost of onshore wind has dropped by around 50% over the past 10 years, and batteries by 80%. And those costs continue to drop. So these technologies are becoming more and more accessible. And this is a factor of scale. And this is what we're really trying to drive with RE100. By bringing together those 335, soon 350, 400 companies with combined electricity demand greater than that of the UK, around a third of that of India. This is really driving scale. And what we're seeing is companies, for example, like Mindspace, who owns and operates one of India's largest real estate portfolios, is investing in scale on rooftop solar arrays to power their business. Budweiser invested in the UK's first unsubsidised solar power purchase agreement, unsubsidised solar farm through a power purchase agreement with BP. With BP. And this is really showing that the costs are going down. You can do unsubsidized solar now. It's no longer a case of, please, can we have a subsidy because it's so expensive? It's actually cost effective, unsubsidized, and can make profits for the companies. So really, it is a matter of scale. The other thing that's great about renewables from a development perspective is that they are scalable. You can do solar at very small scale. You can do very utility scale. And so for small communities, you can really, you can bring in a low-cost solar array, which can provide power without having to connect to the transmission lines, et cetera, et cetera. It's very modular. So really great for the for rural communities and energy access.
Mm-hmm. You're absolutely right. We have seen prices come off very sharply here in India. In fact, leading to concerns that maybe they're too low now and could result in problems as far as the players themselves are concerned. But Jan, I want to come back to you now, and I want to help you explain to us how challenging it was to sell this idea, not just internally, but also to external stakeholders, to investors, to shareholders, and more importantly, to drive this down through your entire supply chain, this idea of sustainability, the idea of focusing on ESG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Shireen. I think ESG clearly can be linked with value creation, and it really helps the narrative with investors and analysts. And I see more and more interest out there in companies who are trying to do the right thing and really move the needle substantially. When you think about it, ESG can help us drive top-line growth because consumers are interested more in sustainable products, and they support companies that have similar ethics than consumers have. It can help you reduce costs. I think Sam is right that the technology is getting more accessible. And so when you do the right thing, it can actually really help you reduce costs as well. So we really see many different advantages of playing into the ESG agenda. And we report on this very publicly so that our stakeholders can also follow our progress, right? We bring out our ESG reports. We work together with the agencies on the ESG metrics, so they're very transparent. And we do many different initiatives that people recognize, so that helps our business overall as well.
Yes, that's a very important point that you make. In fact, while you do put out your ESG report, the World Economic Forum, in partnership with the Big Four, has also now put forward an ESG metric system that will help bring in more transparency as far as reporting is concerned. But Jan, I want to come back to address the issue of India specifically. You talked about focusing on the 4 areas, including smart agriculture, water stewardship, etc. How are you taking that forward here in partnership with various state governments that you're working with the social sector, NGOs, etc., civil society? How are you building on the efforts that you've already started? How do you amplify this and take it further?
Yeah, I think in this context, the United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, they really help because there is a clarity on where the world needs to land. It allows different partners to have a joint view on what needs to happen. And companies, governments, communities, they can subscribe and get behind specific goals and really drive the agenda together. So, of course, these goals are global goals, but they have different relevance in different markets. So when I think about India, I think national priorities, of course, would include poverty, would have health topics in there, even more now with the current COVID situation, but also topics like water, climate change, clean energy, they're very important in India. So when we look at our priorities, we try to fit and adapt our strategy to focus together with the different agencies and governments behind what is important for our communities in which we operate. So for India, we focus a lot on water. We focus a lot on farming and smart agriculture, and of course on climate action to stimulate renewable electricity and to reduce the carbon footprint of our operations. So it really helps us leverage partnerships, and we have great partnerships with RE100. We have great partnerships with the United Nations. For example, we work with UNITAR on the Safer Roads initiative, which is very concrete, right? We leverage our expertise. We fund projects with universities, with government partners, with different agency initiatives to very concretely take a commitment to reduce the number of road accidents. And that's together with UNITAR. So we really see these SDGs as very helpful to get into a common agenda.
Mr. Bagai, let me address that issue with you. What we have seen happen in India, whether it's measures taken by the NITI Aayog to have a performance index and which really captures the progress made by various state governments, etc. Whether you look at what's happening in the energy sector with the dysfunctioning story of Indian discoms. I mean, there are several challenges that continue to exist on the ground. If I were to ask you to draw out the next steps in terms of prioritization, what would those be?
Shireen, I think sustainability and the fact that governments are looking at how they can achieve the SDGs, for example, or for that matter, even industries who are, and I was very happy to listen to both my industry partners who are here of the amazing steps that they're taking. But certainly it's not going to be a very easy task. The goals that you're referring to, whether they are the SDG goals or they are the goals which are set at the national level, are not very easy to make. And from an India perspective, certainly And from a perspective of developing countries, certainly the challenge is even greater because of the conflicting priorities which are there for a decision maker to invest in poverty alleviation or invest in renewables. But I think this struggle between development and environment has been there for a long time, and I think the unique thing in India has been that a balance is always tried to be created to see that the development goes on and the sustainability elements are also addressed. From a perspective of priorities, as you are talking about, I think there are, from a sustainability point of view, there are three big challenges and priorities which India and most of the other developing countries should be addressing. And these three challenges I will talk about are also the triple planetary crisis that we are facing. And these are the crisis of climate change, the crisis of pollution and waste, and the crisis of nature. And I think the big priority which India should be looking at, and globally, is the crisis of nature. And I'm not saying that the crisis of climate change is secondary or should be overlooked. What I'm trying to also point out is that there is an interconnectedness between these three challenges. And the present pandemic that we are going through has proven it beyond any scientific doubt that the ecosystem degradation and the losses and the biodiversity losses that have happened over the last 50 years or 60 years have led to the prevalence of a lot of these zoonotic diseases, and also led to the major climate change disasters that we have been facing. Weather patterns are changing over the last decades. So I think, as our Secretary General and our Executive Director have been saying, it's time that we make peace with nature. And I think that's one big priority.
Absolutely. It's well spoken. That is the need of the hour. We do need to make peace with nature. We need to live in harmony with nature. But Sam, a very important point being made there by Mr. Bagai. And I think that's a challenge that most governments, especially in developing nations, are dealing with. How do you balance the environment's needs with the fact that you have financial constraints, you have limited budgets? What is the road ahead in terms of a non-subsidized future for renewable energy? As you point out, we've already seen costs being driven down quite significantly, specifically on the solar side. As we move forward, do you believe that a world where large government subsidies will not be required to drive the renewable agenda is possible, and how long before we get to that?
We're already there. Unsubsidized renewables are a fact of life. The world is moving incredibly quickly, and we're seeing two trends here. First of all, that we will see the exponential rise of renewables, solar and wind in particular, and batteries to follow very quickly. But what we also see in these trends is the old technology very quickly crashes out. We saw in the last couple of days the province of Guangdong in China announced they were stopping any new coal-fired power stations being built. We are seeing the rapid closure of fleets across Europe and the US. And with any technology, whether it be digital cameras when mobile phones came in, film cameras when digital cameras came in, the new technology rises exponentially. The old one doesn't just slowly dwindle, it crashes. That means we need to really be careful to protect the workers who are currently working in the fossil fuel industry to ensure that they have new jobs to go to in the new economy. This isn't a case of when will renewables take off. This isn't a case of when will the energy transition happen. It is happening right now. And it's really important that countries like India are able to leapfrog. It's not a case of, we need to stick with the old technology because it's cheaper. It's not. Yeah. And we need to protect those workers, make sure those workers can also leapfrog to the new technology, so there's not a reliance on old technology that will become stranded assets in order to maintain jobs.
You're absolutely right. And let me put that question to Mr. Bagai. The unintended consequences of this transition, Sam was bringing about the issue of workers who will lose their jobs in a particular area and will need to be reskilled, upskilled, and be ready to take on other kinds of roles and responsibilities. Mr. Bagai, the preparedness to deal with some of these unintended consequences of this transition, are we there?
In fact, it's a misnomer that firstly that sustainability or switching to technologies which are more automated, for example, would lead to loss of jobs. So I think we need to move away from that mindset to look at what are the alternative technologies which would support sustainability, what kind of job creation will happen. And a lot of scientific studies have been done in the past few years on how, if you're greening your efforts, how do green jobs get created, which are probably in many cases add-ons to what is the existing workforce. Meaning the kind of waste services and the waste management systems that have been brought in and the kind of jobs, additional jobs that have been created are quite substantial. But having said that, I think you're right to say, are we geared up for such kind of skilling the people? And I'll give you two examples here instead of talking at an academic level. Meaning this whole renewables that we are talking about has brought in a need for skill sets of handling the renewable infrastructure and also working on repairs, for example. And I'm very happy to announce or say that the civil society organizations, apart from the government, the whole skill development ministry is looking at developing modules for skill sets in the sustainability vertical and the sustainability sector. But the civil society organizations are also gearing up for that. And I'll give an example of SEWA in Gujarat, which is working not only with UNEP, but with a lot of other organizations to skill 20,000 women over the next 4 or 5 years on handling renewables. And this whole work is happening in the interiors of Kutch area where the salt pan workers are there. And they're shifting that whole technology to renewables. And they are bringing in efforts to skill those 20,000 women to handle not only solar panels, but also see how they can be repaired.
Sam, Mr. Bagai, and Yan, appreciate you joining us here on this very special conversation as we take stock of the progress made and, more importantly, what the future looks like. Hopefully, it's going to be a greener and a cleaner future, not just here in India, but globally as well. Appreciate your time. Thanks very much for joining us here today.
Thank you very much.
Hello and welcome to Sustainability 100 Plus. I'm Anand Narsimhan, and this is an effort that here at the News 18 digital platform we are embarking upon with our partners AB InBev. Over the course of the last recent months, we have had multiple conversations on trying to build sustainability so that our coming generations can live comfortably and enjoy the comforts of Mother Earth or planet Earth for at least the next 100 years. So how do we become a circular economy? How do we make the conversation green? The consciousness about having to be champions of sustainability, not just with private entities or from government, but also as far as people, individuals, and of course, a partnership of all of these. So these are the 4 Ps that we will focus on in this broadcast this time around. We're going to be joined by an august panel from the corporate world, also those who've been fighting and pushing for this cause across platforms. And we'll also have voices from government. Those are also champions of sustainability. So we're looking forward to conversing with Aditya Thackeray and Dushyant Chautala through the course of this discourse. But first up, let me introduce the panelists for this broadcast. We have Mr. Jan Klisner, who is the VP Procurement and Sustainability APAC for AB InBev. Jan, thank you very, very much, and really appreciate this partnership. And we'll talk about this in just, let me just introduce everybody else too. Mr. Dilip Chenoy, he is the Secretary General of FICCI. He's with us. Ms. Charu Sethi, she's the Head Strategic Partnerships and Communications at UNDP, or the United Nations Development Programme. Mr. Ravi Bhatnagar, Director External Affairs and Partnerships, SOA at Reckitt, is also with us. Dr. Lopamutra Priyadarshini, GM CSR, Land, R&R, Sustainability and Community Relations at Hindalco Industries Limited. And of course, we have Dia Mirza, actress, model, UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador, and the United Nations Secretary General Advocate for SDGs. This is a subject which is very, very close to her heart, very dear to her. So let me start with Dia and then take it to everyone else. Dia, first up, thank you very much. And to all our other panelists, thank you very much for doing this and for agreeing to be a part of this discussion. Community. Let's start with people, community. What is it that we can do to ensure that sustainability becomes a part of communities? It becomes inherent to the way we live.
Thank you for having me, Anand. It's a pleasure being here, and I'm very grateful that you're having this conversation. It's a very important conversation to drive human behavioral change. And I think that's where community will come into action. When we speak of sustainability and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, I think it's very important for all of us to recognize that the SDGs are the North Star. These are goals that not just organizations and governments have to implement, individuals have to acknowledge, understand, and implement in their daily lives. From my own experience, from the time that I learned about the SDGs, I've discovered ways and means to bring about changes in the way I live. I think it starts with understanding that human behavior and human action has led us down this dangerous path where we find ourselves creating a world or having created a world that is leading to mass extinction and can possibly lead to our human extinction. And we have broken and destroyed a very fragile relationship that we had with nature. So I think when we talk about achieving sustainability, it starts with rebuilding our individual relationships with nature and understanding that our health, our well-being, our peace, our progress, everything is linked to nature. So when I say that, it's not some abstract idea. It's genuinely about increasing our interaction with nature, spend more time with nature, grow more trees, contribute towards leading a more conscious lifestyle. So what are the cleaning agents that we're bringing home? What kind of garments are we wearing? How much are we consuming? How much are we wasting? How are we treating our waste? Are we segregating? Are we upcycling? Are we repairing enough? So these are questions that I think we can all start asking of ourselves at an individual level. And the answers, of course, have to bring about some serious lifestyle changes. And those include, refusing packaged food or single-use plastics, or trying to eat local, buy local. And I think more than anything else, just understanding that we don't have a chance to recover from this crisis, this climate crisis, if each and every one of us doesn't start implementing some serious change in our everyday lives and the way we think and the way we live.
Do you think as a consumer, we need to move to a discourse where we would now start checking the energy footprint? We should ask, deciding when you decide how good or bad a product is, on that label it should be, what is this product or company's energy footprint?
So one of the things that I always say to myself, and there are three questions that I always ask for myself. Where's this coming from? So where have the ingredients been grown? Has it been ethically done? Is it safe? Is it natural? Is it healthy? When I put it back in the environment, is it going to pollute the environment? And the third thing is, do I really need this? Now, the big problem with a lot of companies that package food, beverage, and many other items of our daily use have not bothered to answer the single most important question is, for the fact that we are producing all of the single use waste, where is it going to go? So I would like for companies to, implement extended producers responsibility and celebrate it. So put it out there, tell people how you are collecting the waste that you're introducing into the market, how are you upcycling it, or how are you introducing it into a circular economy, or better still, how have you chosen as an organization or an industry or a company to replace polluting materials with non-polluting ones for your packaging? And I would say the same even for ingredients. I didn't know up until recently that many of the ingredients in my domestic cleaners, like things that I use to clean my floor or wash my dishes, were filled with chemicals that are carcinogenic and are potentially very harmful to the environment as well. So I think there is so much of the culture of use and throw and just kind of consume mindlessly that has gotten us where we have. It needs to be replaced with the culture of question, understand, function from a place of care and empathy, not just towards your own family or your immediate loved ones, but towards the planet as well.
Joining us into this conversation on how are we going to get everybody on board, public, private, people, and of course a partnership among all three. How do we get communities to engage? Is somebody who's always been a champion of sustainability, champion of being conscious about our environment and also doing more for planet Earth and to conserve. He is also currently cabinet minister in the government of Maharashtra. Aditya Thackeray with us. He is the Minister of Tourism and Environment in the government of Maharashtra. Aditya, thank you very, very much for joining us. My first question to you is, Maharashtra is a top performer in Niti Aayog's Index 2019, following innovative ways to boost renewable energy. Now, what kind of innovation is currently being implemented in the state?
I believe the word sustainable really is extremely crucial, extremely important, not just for our state, it's important for our country, for our region, for the world at large today. Going through whatever's being seen around the world in terms of the forest fires, the heat waves, the lower dip in temperatures, the erratic monsoons, storms, what we need to realize is, along with all the development, along with all the progress that is happening, nothing is complete without the word sustainable. Of course, sustainability not only in terms of infrastructure or in terms of environment, but in terms of livelihood, in terms of quality of life, in terms of the way we look at everything. I think it's extremely crucial today that everything is seen through a lens of climate test and the lens of sustainability. Because the era of use and throw is gone past us. We need to look at things in the next 50 years in the light of how sustainable it could be. I think that is very crucial for us today.
What measures are you taking to champion the SDGs in the state? What are the priority areas for you regarding sustainability?
For us, I'll divide the answer into two. SDGs, of course, is very, very important when you look at Sustainable Development Goals 2030. I believe that for a better quality of life, for ease of living as a concept, because normally we discuss ease of business and we discuss a lot of other things in terms of ease of working, but everything is connected today with ease of living. And once the ease of living is improved, it automatically means that it is improving because of all the other aspects connected to it, be it a better urbanized life, a better rural life, a better connectivity, better healthcare, education, drinking water, and all other standards. So SDGs is, of course, something which is very, very important to us. For the longest of time, the Roti Kapada Makan policy of various governments across India is basically connected to SDGs. Most of the cabinet decisions, most of the bills that are passed in the legislative are also to do with SDGs. The only thing is we need to connect them better and we need to implement them better where really the SDGs would be in place. Of course, in terms of sustainability, in terms of clean energy, green energy, when we look at a larger perspective of India, and of course a state like Maharashtra where urbanization is increasing at a rapid pace, industrialization is increasing at a rapid pace, EVs is the next big thing. All of this has to be connected and supported by clean energy. When we look at the conventional forms of energy that have been largely also contributing to pollution, going forward, that is not something which is sustainable or even acceptable to our generation. Of course, as Government of India has signed up with the Solar Sister Alliance around the world. We have our own commitments to various pacts around the world. Maharashtra as well has committed to 25% of our energy needs to be met by renewable energy, non-conventional energy by 2025, and we're moving towards that, be it our renewable energy policy, be it our solar policy. An example like the floating solar that we're having on the Middle Vettana Dam or the Mumbai-Nagpur highway. We've been pushing for solarization of the highway. We're looking at 250 megawatts of solar energy being generated from the highway. So multiple facets of these are coming out. Something as good intentedly brought out like the electric vehicle policy. Now you cannot have electric vehicles run on something like thermal plants. You need to have clean green energy supporting that, and therefore a whole ecosystem has to be built. I think that is the key for us, and that is what we're working on.
So let me take that question to Jan and say, Jan, is in AB and Bev, are you moving to a stage where the next time you go, you're making beverage and my beverage is a green beverage? Why should you have my beverage? Because it's a green beverage. And what do you mean by a green beverage? It goes across saying, why is it in a bottle? Why is it not in a can? Or maybe tomorrow you have the beverage in bamboo.
Yeah, well, it's a fair challenge. It's a very good challenge, in fact, and it's something that we've been working on ourselves for quite some time, because the product here that we have, at the end, we need a container to bring it to our consumers, and to bring it to our consumers in a way that protects the quality and it's safe for everybody. So if you look at what we're doing, and we're trying to, what we call is, first of all, reduce. If it's not reduce, reuse, recycle, or rethink. And those four key principles we try to apply in everything that we do. We look at it in packaging, we look for it for energy, water consumption, and even agriculture, right? But focusing on packaging, what we are currently focusing very much on, specifically in India, even more than in other countries, is how can we make sure that whenever we put packaging in there, like a bottle, that this bottle comes back to our brewery and we can reuse it again. Because that is, for us, the best way to make sure that our impact is as little as possible. That, in combination, that every new bottle is made out of as much as possible old bottles, right? So it is both recycling, but also reuse. The reuse is even more impactful than the recycling. The recycling helps us to avoid virgin material. The recycling helps us to lower even the energy cost to make a bottle. But the reuse is really making a difference. And that's where India has a benefit towards many other markets we operate in around the globe, is that it is common practice for people to bring bottles back to collection points, or people to collect them so that we can reuse them again. So that is one element, is this reuse, reduce, recycle, rethink. Same applies for a can. A can, I mean, the way it's established right now cannot be reused, but there, recycling is definitely priority number one. I think that of the cans that we use currently in India, probably 75 to close to 80% is recycled. So again, try to avoid as much as possible the virgin material. So those are our two key containers that we use to bring our products to consumers. Next to that, we are like constantly screening the market and trying to look for innovative ideas. That's the rethink part. And there we work with startups. Like, can I use, or can I create a bottle of, as you said, bamboo? Or we're even working with a startup is, can they create a bottle out of barley straw? We need barley. It's one of our key ingredients that goes in our beer, that goes in our product. The barley straw is often burned on the field, which on itself creates a lot of pollution. If I can use that straw to at least partly become a container, it's again a huge step forward. But these are, like, today, small scale, real innovative ideas, innovative projects. By far, we're not ready to scale up. But this is like, we're always betting on two sides. Is on one, how can we be as low as far as impact is concerned? And on the other side, what are the innovations out there that can help us to truly drive change?
Also, as an organization, Jan, if I can, press you a little. As an organization, are you also very conscious about your energy footprint? Because you have thousands of employees, you've got a lot of companies and factories. So are you taking your factories closer to the farm to reduce the transportation energy cost, the consumption of energy, the amount of air conditioning that is being used, all of that? And somewhere I had read recently that AB InBev globally has also structured its debt or its financing with how green they are. So your interest rates are going to fluctuate depending upon your energy footprint.
No, we're definitely doing that, and we're taking up the challenge. What we've been done for many years is we've been focusing on consumption in general. Is it energy? Is it water? Whatever we need to produce within our own walls, to reduce that as much as possible. Year over year, we are trying to hit certain reductions. But since a few years, when we came out with our 4 key sustainability targets around packaging, agriculture, water, and energy, we started to look at the full supply chain, starting with the farmer up until the fridge to get the beer cold with our consumers. So energy specifically, yes. I mean, we are trying to localize as much as possible. Localize for us means working with farmers. In India, we work with 1,200 farmers, more or less, and growing, to produce local barley. Instead of shipping it in from South America, instead of shipping it in from Europe, how can we produce barley, which is a key ingredient, locally? Good for quality, good for supply security, and a tremendous impact on the community of those farmers, the farmers, their families, the whole livelihood. But by doing it, we also shorten the whole supply chain, which then requires a lot less energy to bring that barley to the malt house, to a brewery, up until the consumer. So yes, we're looking throughout full supply chain. We're looking at it from both a consumption and also, to be honest, from a business cost point of view. Because sustainability, a lot of people forget to also look at sustainability as it is really good for business. All the ideas that we're working on, is it in energy, is it in packaging, is it in agriculture, whatever we do, there's also a good business reason to do it. From a cost point of view, we're a company and we're more than happy to increase those profits that are helping us to grow, that are helping us to work even more with farmers, that are helping us to have more employees at the end. So we are looking at sustainability across the whole supply chain, but we also look at it also from a business point of view, in the sense that, yes, we have an obligation as a big organization, as a big company, towards the environment, towards the community that we operate in, but we also have an obligation to make a company grow and to make it stronger and better.
Joining us now is Shri Dushyant Chautala, Deputy Chief Minister of Haryana. Dushyant ji, namaste. Always a pleasure to speak to you. और आज in this dialogue over sustainability 100+, मेरा सवाल, पहला सवाल आपसे ये है कि ये जो 4 P's हैं, public, private, people and their partnerships, आप इन सभी 4 स्तंभों को कैसे देखते हैं?
It is the most important part जब हम public, private, people and their partnership की बात करते हैं, और हमारी स्टेट ने प्रायोरिटी लिया है कि हम इन चारों सेक्टर्स को कंबाइंड तरीके से आगे लेकर चले। और पिछले इस 1.25 साल में कोविड क्राइसिस में हमने क्राइसिस के साथ साथ अपॉर्चुनिटी ली है कि हमारी पार्टनरशिप जो पब्लिक के साथ है वो और बेटर हो। और मुझे लगता है हरियाणा हैज बिकम अ लीडर नाउ, वेयर वर्किंग ऑफ इंडस्ट्रीज जो थी वो बड़ी वास्टली हमारे यहाँ चली। सबसे कम लॉकडाउन अगर लगा किसी इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर पे तो हरियाणा पे लगा। पब्लिक को भी हमने लीस्ट बाउंड किया इन द रिस्ट्रिक्शंस, और मुझे लगता है कि वो एक अपॉर्चुनिटी रही है फॉर द स्टेट ऑफ हरियाणा टू मूव फॉरवर्ड।
अब भारत के मजबूत एसडीजी विकास लक्ष्यों में तेजी लाने के लिए राज्य किस तरह से मदद कर सकते हैं?
जब सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स आए थे एज अ मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट दैट टाइम, हमने चाहे वो यूएन के अंदर हो, चाहे वो हमारी इंटरनेशनल जो पार्लियामेंटेरियन यूनियन है आईपीयू, उसके अंदर हो, इंडिया ने बड़ा प्राथमिक तौर पर काम किया और हरियाणा ने भी अपने तमाम डिपार्टमेंट्स में एक जॉइंट एफर्ट किया है टू वर्क ऑन टू सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स। और पिछले दिनों जब नीति आयोग ने अपनी रिपोर्ट सबमिट करी, उसके अंदर भी हरियाणा टॉप लीडिंग स्टेट्स में आया है। तो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स, क्योंकि वो ग्लोबली आज के दिन एक अहम हिस्सा बन चुके हैं, मुझे लगता है कि हरियाणा इज डूइंग वेरी वेल। यस, देयर नीड्स टू बी अ लॉट मोर टू बी डन, और उसके लिए हम डाइवर्सिफाई भी कर रहे हैं कि डिपार्टमेंट हेड्स भी, डिपार्टमेंट के कंसर्न्ड मिनिस्टर्स भी अपने लेवल पर उसको एक्सपेडिशियसली लेके चले कि हम टाइमली उसको अचीव कर पाए।
दुष्यंत जी, पिछले साल आपने केंद्र सरकार से दरख्वास्त की थी, आग्रह किया था कि जलवायु परिवर्तन को स्कूल सिलेबस का हिस्सा बनाया जाए। अब आप एक बात बताइए कि कैसे कैसे तरीके हैं, किन तरीकों से सतत जागरूकता पैदा की जा सकती है?
देखिए, प्रधानमंत्री ने कोविड के बाद और उससे पहले जब पोल्यूशन क्राइसिस नॉर्थ इंडिया में हुए थे, इसको क्लाइमेट चेंज को एक इम्पोर्टेंट रोल प्ले किया था। और मुझे लगता है जो नई एजुकेशन पॉलिसी आई है, उसने भी एक डायरेक्शन इसकी ओर दी है। और मुझे लगता है कि आने वाले समय में इंटीग्रल पार्ट होगा कि हम अपनी जनरेशन्स को प्राथमिक तौर से सिखाने का काम करें कि कैसे हमारा एनवायरनमेंट हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है, और उस इन्वायरमेंट को प्रिजर्व करने के लिए, चाहे हमारे वाटर रिसोर्सेज हों, नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज हों या और अल्टरनेटिव रिसोर्सेज हों, उस पर काम किया जाए। हरियाणा ने उसके ऊपर एक बड़ा कदम उठाया है, जहां हम व्हीकल, क्योंकि वी आर द लार्जेस्ट मैन्युफैक्चरर ऑफ 4 and 2 व्हीलर व्हीकल्स नॉट ओनली इन द कंट्री बट ग्लोबली ऑल्सो, और उसके अंदर हम हमारी इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल पॉलिसी लेकर आ रहे हैं। साथ में हमने एक स्कोप, हमारी जो HEPP है, HEEP है, हरियाणा एंटरप्राइज एंड एम्प्लॉयमेंट पॉलिसी 2020 की, उसको भी रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी की ओर डाइवर्ट किया है कि इंडस्ट्री ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा अपने खुद के एरिया में या सपोर्टिंग एरिया के अंदर रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी की रिसोर्सेज लगाएं, चाहे वो सोलर का हो चाहे विंड का हो, जिससे उनका जो पावर यूटिलाइजेशन है वो नेचुरल रिसोर्सेज पे कम पड़े। और मुझे लगता है कि हरियाणा को देखते हुए अब 6 स्टेट्स और हैं जिनने अपनी व्हीकल पॉलिसी के ऊपर काम शुरू किया है। और पिछले दिनों जब नो व्हीकल डे था, चीफ मिनिस्टर ने स्वयं साइकिल पर जाकर सेक्रेटरीट में भी ये दर्शाया है कि अब समय आ चुका कि हम नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल डिपेंडेंट इकोनॉमी की ओर कदम उठाएं।
जलवायु परिवर्तन से निपटने के लिए किस तरह के रोड मैप तैयार किया जा सकता है?
हमारे लिए सबसे बड़ा टास्क एट हैंड भी है और इन कमिंग फ्यूचर डेज भी ये रहेगा, क्योंकि हमारे पैडियस बहुत जलाया जाता था, मगर पिछले साल हमने प्रति एक एकड़ और फिर उसके बाद प्रति एक टन के हिसाब से बेनिफिट फार्मर्स को देना शुरू किया। और बहुत से फार्मर्स ने अपने आप को डाइवर्सिफाई किया, रादर देन बर्निंग दे स्टार्टेड सेलिंग इट टू इंडस्ट्री। और पिछले दिनों पेट्रोलियम डिपार्टमेंट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के साथ भी हमारी चर्चा हुई, और अब जो पेट्रोनेट है, जो सारी हमारी गैस और पेट्रोलियम एजेंसीज का एक जॉइंट एफर्ट है, उसका टाई अप करके हम बड़े लेवल पर हरियाणा में 5-10 एकड़ के एग्रीकल्चर वेस्ट टू गैस एंड पावर प्लांट्स लगाने का काम करेंगे। आज ही मैंने सुबह उसका रोड मैप फाइनल किया है, जिसके अंदर हमारे 4 जिले फाइनल हो चुके हैं और जींद के अंदर हम 10 एकड़ टारगेट कर रहे हैं। और मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि अगले 1 से 1.5 महीने में हमारे पांचों के पांचों डिस्ट्रिक्ट में लोकेशंस फाइनलाइज हो जाएंगी, और फिर पेट्रोनेट के साथ स्टेट ऑफ हरियाणा एक्सपेडिशियसली अपना कार्य टेकअप करेगी कि हम पैडी हस्क को कैसे गैस कन्वर्शन की ओर भी लेके चले। और पैडी हस्क के साथ साथ और जो एग्रीकल्चर वेस्ट है, चाहे वो कॉटन का स्टेम हो, चाहे वो वीट का स्ट्रॉ हो, चाहे वो आपके मस्टर्ड स्ट्रॉ हो, चाहे वो मेज का स्ट्रॉ हो, उन तमाम चीज़ों को गैसेस व्हीकल्स के अंदर, चाहे वो PNG बेस्ड हो, चाहे वो LPG बेस्ड हो, चाहे CNG बेस्ड हो, यूटिलाइज हम ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कर पाए। हमारा एक कदम है और मैं उम्मीद करता हूँ कि हरियाणा को रेप्लिकेट करते हुए बहुत सी ऐसी और स्टेट्स होंगी जो आने वाले दिनों में इसके ऊपर कार्य करेगी।
भारत को एसडीजी यानी सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट ग्रोथ हासिल करने में कौन से नीतिगत बदलाव मदद कर सकते हैं?
देखिए, सबसे बड़ा बदलाव जो आज के दिन मुझे दिखता है, इट इज़ नॉट डिपेंडेंट ऑन हाउ स्टेट्स कैन डू इट और हाउ गवर्नमेंट कैन डू इट. It has to be a collaborated efforts between the citizens across the country. और मुझे लगता है कि अगर स्वच्छ भारत मिशन के अंदर हर नागरिक बाथरूम बनाने की बात हो, ओडीएफ फ्री की बात हो, एक यूनाइटेड नेशन की तरह काम कर रहा था, वैसे अगर हम एक एक गोल के ऊपर यूनाइटेड हो जाए और काम करें तो द टास्क विल नॉट बी फार अहेड. हम बहुत जल्दी एसडीजीज को एज अ कंट्री अडॉप्ट कर पाएंगे, सक्सेसफुली अचीव कर पाएंगे.
Charuti, let me ask you this. Is this a big challenge to get people involved along with public and private entities to try and work and make sustainability as part of our consciousness?
Firstly, Anand, I'd like to thank you for having me as part of the panel, and it's great to speak to all the panel members today. And before I specifically comment on your question, I think we are nail on its head by talking about the Sustainable Development Goals as we talk about this topic. And why I would like to talk about the Sustainable Development Goals when we are talking about these 3 Ps sort of coming together is that the SDGs really provide that framework, that cohesive shared framework to be able to help collaborate, to be able to sort of work together towards the SDGs, which may primarily focus on reducing inequality, on fighting poverty, and of course, climate action that we're talking about today. But they foster collective action and partnerships in addressing these complex and multidimensional challenges. And it's an ambitious goal when we are saying that we want to leave no one behind. It will not happen if everybody acts as they singular entities. It is important to look at collaboration between public, private, and people. It has become absolutely critical. In terms of this growing emergency of climate, I think we've all read the recent IPCC report on climate change with utter shock. Irreversible events like rising of sea levels. That's something which is looking like how the glaciers are melting faster than how people's wills and leaders' wills are moving to protect the planet. So it's very, very important to sort of come together to work on this climate emergency. It's actually code red for humanity at this point of time. And the only way which we will be able to create inclusive and green communities would be through coming together in solidarity. And to do that, as you said, there are these 3 players which are working, the public, the private, and the people. I think the people are at the center of it all. The public sector really needs to create this enabling environment through the enabling policy and regulatory framework, but also sort of look at national commitments, which can then percolate down to local commitments and citizen action, as what Dia was saying, and also provide convening platforms and national campaigns to act on this climate emergency. For example, what Ravi's been working and the government has been working on the Banega Swachh India campaign or the Swachh Bharat campaign. Those are the national campaigns which citizens are galvanizing towards, and there is this whole public-private citizen action towards that. The private sector, on the other hand, is more of an innovator and an investor. As I said, that the UN and the government can't do this alone. The private sector, it's key for the private sector to join the party, I would say. They can bring in new capital, technologies, products, build green infrastructure, look at green livelihoods, work towards underserved communities, and adopt inclusive core business practices. It was really great to hear Young talking about the fact that sustainability is not just from the point of view of sustainability, but it's become the core of businesses. And I think businesses over the world are realizing that sustainability is not a side issue. And perhaps sustainability and profitability now go hand in hand. And then, of course, people, Dia talked about how people at their individual levels have to look at what sort of impact they're making in their own sort of ecosystem. And of course, at our individual levels, but how can people also come together? There are lots of youth activists nowadays. We need more Gretas. We need more youth champions who do this, but who sort of influence this at all stratas of society. So I think if the PPP model can come together as a people-first PPP model for sustainable development, we definitely can achieve these goals.
But the other challenge is also how can we make it as part of our consciousness, right? At a curricular level, and also perhaps even when you're looking at it as an organizational level, how each individual, can there be HR practices which can be put in place Raviji, which before I come across to you, I'm just going to take this across to Lopamutra ji and ask her, what is it that they are doing at Hindalco? And is it possible to try and make energy a KRA or your green footprint a KRA? And overall, then the organization's goals also, consciously move towards sustainability.
Very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for making me the part of this discussion. As we say, Hindalco, sustainability is at the utmost importance. Hindalco has a well-rounded approach to sustainability, encompassing areas like sustainable mining practices, because our plants are very close to our mines as well. The energy conservation, as you mentioned, recycling, environment-friendly disposal of industrial waste, safety practices, socio-economic development of the communities around, and obviously the empowering the employees to take up the sustainable practices. Actually, in our mining as well, regeneration activities and community engagement practices are geared towards the minimizing the environmental impact and maximizing the socio-economic impact during the development of mines, because we also have a mining closure plans. In our efforts to reduce environmental footprints, Hindalco actually aligns its sustainable initiative with the UN SDGs. All our CSR work or whatever work we are doing, we are aligning it with the goals of UN, and we are working towards it to, at least in this area, how can we reduce that gap. So we operate with a sense of responsibility towards our communities and actively mitigate the impact of our resource intensive operation, because as you know, mining is always a resource intensive operations on the surrounding, and the community-led initiatives are also aimed at sustainable socio-economic development. Now, I am pleased to inform that earlier also I said that Dow Jones Hindalco was able to make it to DJSI Emerging Market Index. It was ranked 3rd globally in mineral sector and aluminium sector. So when we talk about responsible mining, it's an integral part of our business imperatives, and we are focused on achieving operational excellence and ensuring the well-being of our people and environment. But when we talk about our Hindalco's green initiatives, lending a hand to the Odisha government, Aditya Aluminium, a unit in metal business in Aditya Birla Group, has set up 24 megawatt solar power plant in Lapanga, Sambalpur. So slowly, what we are trying to do is we are going towards a renewable energies sector. Even where the unit I am sitting currently, we have 5 megawatt. And slowly what we are trying to do is more and more renewable energies, how it can come to our Hindalco units. When we talk about waste, one of the plant I am sitting is zero discharge plant. So 27% of our bauxite residue, red mud, basically is consumed as a raw material, as Jan was saying from InBev, that we have to reuse, recycle. So our 27% of the bauxite residues are used in cement plants. Recently, we have tied up with some agencies. The ash what we generate also 100% will be used in the Almia cement we have signed. So we try to ensure that whatever the byproducts comes out, or residues comes out, it can be used as a raw material for the other industries. When we talk about water, we have a zero liquid discharge status achieved at 11 out of our 15 operational units. A special task force on water management is formed in all the plant locations. So we are rigorously monitoring and managing the water consumption and water availabilities.
Raviji, you are in the business of keeping India safe, healthy, clean. So hygiene, sanitation, all of this in your ambit. And more importantly, you're working towards reducing the water impact. So be it Banega Swachh or Mission Pani or various initiatives, the product range itself at Reckitt is working towards trying to reduce energy consumption or trying to improve sustainability. But what is it that significantly that you're doing?
Thank you so much for getting me on this show. And I was just hearing Via Mirza ji, and this reminds me of a few years back when I did a campaign where she was also there, which was titled as Mere 10 Gaz, means my 10 yards, where we talked about, responsibility of everyone to be a part of the whole sustainability journey. And the ambitions are very big. And, when we talk about India as a country, so India has Bharat as well as in India and India both, so it's there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of things which are very, very different in India as compared to other parts of the world. When we talk about the whole sustainability agenda, the first thing what comes to our mind is we should not be doing the greenwashing. There is a term called whitewashing. In the same way, there's a term called, greenwashing. So greenwashing is basically like, you just want to tell to the consumer, okay, we are doing plenty, it's enough. We are meeting our ambitions, but India is a host to around 1.3 billion people. And India is a country where we have seen like how on the SDGs, like there is a 6 point growth, what we have got. And then what Charu said very rightly is basically LNOB, which is leaving no one behind. So how companies can alone do all this? And SDG 2030, one of the big vision and agenda is basically leaving no one behind. So therefore, it's a very important journey for all of us for the national well-being. And when we talk about the national prosperity, that will come when we have the sustainability in green deep into the public, the private, and in all type of environments. What's there?
One is that is it important to have a carrot and stick approach, that you are as manufacturers, as private entities and bodies trying to do on your own something, but then there has to also something in terms of regulation that has to come into play, which facilitates a push towards sustainability, like single-use plastic. If you raise the issue of single-use plastic, the moment single-use plastic was banned, people had to look at an alternative. And the alternative was cloth bags or multiple use plastic or some other way, paper bags, or not carrying any bags at all and just bringing things in your hand. There are multiple ways of looking at it. Do you believe that is also important? You need to have a carrot and stick kind of thing, and also companies need to be incentivized somewhere. Organizations like Reckitt and AB InBev and other organizations also laid a little bit of a nudge.
Very, very, very interesting question indeed. Like, I will actually say, like, one of the leadership behaviors at Reckitt, that's basically care. Care is one of the leadership behaviors by which we all live. And when and it's also triggered in a way like, we are striving for a cleaner, healthier world. Everything starts with a purpose. And there is something called national purpose, there is something which is brand purpose, and then there is something company purpose. And we all are on a different pillar, different situations. All companies stand differently, but what I can tell you is, yes, regulations are very important, regulatory frameworks are very important. It also helps everyone to think about it in a direction. And then definitely, like, what I personally believe is doing the right thing always and living to the compass of care. So if I have a leadership trait, and if my company lives with the leadership trait which is care, why I should not be caring about my planet, why I should not be caring about the people, why I should not be caring about others. There is something which is very, very interestingly put among all the 17 SDGs. My favorite is SDG 17, which is on the partnerships. So that SDG actually takes us to a situation where, like, we look forward for getting into the alliances, learning from the others, moving fast. And when you reach to a certain level, then it's a multiplier effect which works. But to give you a nudge to start the work, it's also important to have the regulatory practices also which are there. Nevertheless, government has done some wonderful job, and our National Green Tribunal too, which has also kept all of us bind towards the laws which are there. And that's also important, because it's a mix of everyone's efforts. It can't be just possible just you think something good and things will happen.
Joining us now is Shri Dilip Chenoy, Secretary General of FICCI. Dilip ji, namaste. Always a pleasure to speak with you. And FICCI's been doing a lot of work on the sustainability front. So let me first ask you this: how can we unite the four P's, public, private, people, towards a common goal of sustainability? Partnerships, very important.
So having a common goal is very important. And if you look at public, private, and people, there are three different entities. As you know, it was said earlier that if the people don't contribute, right, then the whole sustainability movement can get derailed. So if I look at the three roles of people there, first is the public. And here, what we normally mean by public is government or the stakeholders that enforce rules, whether it's the municipal corporation or the state governments or the national government, etc., and the regulators. So they have to actually create a framework of rules and regulations that are simple to understand, that can be adhered to, and that, allow for usage and actually compliance. There's no point in having rules and regulations that are very difficult to comply with. So I think the first thing is that the whole public should create this ecosystem of rules and regulations, as well as an ecosystem of government services and providers that enable people to actually meet the goals of sustainability. If you look at the private, and this fundamentally relates to private organizations, since people is individuals, they're not going to come on that. I think organizations should also look at not only regulations, but they should also look at how they can, leapfrog and be leaders in demonstrating sustainability. I mean, there were examples of companies who talked about, a triple bottom line and talked about net zero even now, when these are not very, let's say, required by law in India. So, how can you be ahead of the curve in looking at, implementing sustainability processes, systems in your own organizations so that it actually benefits society and the people at large? And I think the third is that, if you have people have to, adhere to it. For example, if you talk about plastic waste, or if you talk about any other thing, then people have to dispose of their waste responsibly. If you look about waste segregation, because you want to generate, electricity out of waste, again, you got to segregate waste. So each individual needs to actually do that. Reducing carbon footprint, reducing consumption of electricity. So I think, each one has a role, but what unites is having a vision and a kind of a roadmap that is easily understandable, is easily, doable, and can be easily complied with.
What is the accountability of corporates towards climate action and achieving UN SDGs?
Yeah, I think there are two separate bits of this. One is climate action, right, which is really looking at addressing 3 or 4 different things. One, how do you reduce the carbon footprint of the organization? 2 is how do you look at all the other emissions that could actually cause harm to the climate, and minimize or eliminate these from your production process or from your sector. And the third area, just for example, there are many others, is how do you actually eliminate using substances or using products that have a negative climate impact in your manufacturing process or in your delivery of services. I think if you look at these 3 things there, it is important for corporates, right, to actually enable this to happen. But just by merely stating that you do this is not enough. I think you've got to set targets. You've got to, some corporates have said we will be carbon neutral by X year. We will be water positive by a certain year, or you will have X% of our manufacturing facilities operating on renewable energy over this period of time. So I think, they need to set targets. A lot of people actually mistake the accountability in just complying with regulation. So complying with regulation and enabling, the country to achieve its goal is one part of it. But, corporates can also demonstrate leadership by setting much more ambitious goals, setting ambitious targets. And the good part is that most of the stuff that we need to do for climate action actually has a positive impact on the company. More so now that many of the financing companies are looking at ESG as a key element of financing organizations. Proactive accountability and proactive steps taken by corporates will help them access funds as they go ahead. So it's multiple steps in terms of accountability towards climate action. I think the UN SDGs is a separate issue. There are multiple SDGs across different areas. I think the first one thing that corporates need to do is to look at the various SDGs and see which of those, whether it relates to employment, good work, that particular one, or health or other aspects, which one of those SDGs actually is relevant and is impacted by action that the corporate could take in their domain of work. And then, set specific goals for each one of those SDGs and develop an action plan and a roadmap how to get from point A to point B. So, climate action is one set of action and goals, and in the SDGs is another set of actions and goals that corporates could do. Many Indian corporates are actually doing it. Many have announced roadmaps. Many declare it in their annual report. Some even present different reports for consumption. Many of the corporates have this on the website. So it's really a combination of all of this. So compliance is one part, but leadership is the other.
Now, the implementation of SDG also require investments. What kind of ROI can corporates derive?
Investing to address the SDGs itself is a huge positive. And if you look at a lot of the financing institutions and the whole kind of ecosystem that is there that reflects the ability of the corporate to actually operate, there are different types of returns on investment that you get. The first one very clearly is the acceptance in society, where you are seen as a progressive company, as a responsible company. I think if you look and direct your investments into specific areas that generate social or environmental benefits, for example, affordable housing or sustainable timber, or let's say eye care clinics, right? Then this provides another set of return on investment in terms of the brand equity to the company. Also, the whole thing could be looked at when you invest in SDGs. You actually can get access to much different types of finance and a cheaper rate of finance. And we need to think of raising several innovative ways of financing of this, which could be another form of return on investment. So I think depending on the SDGs, depending on what area you're focusing on within this overall group, you will have a different kind of return of investment to the company.
True, very rightly said. And I've run out of time, but we'll take this with the promise of taking this discourse forward in the near future very soon. But somewhere, as there is sustainability becomes a growing consciousness among organizations, public, private, and through partnerships. Somewhere among people, there is also this need to ensure that what is sustainable or what is green or what is eco-friendly is not something which is supposed to be priced at a premium. It is supposed to be available at far less than what the other alternatives or the existing alternatives are, because only then is it going to then become the choice. Because if I'm going to get a bamboo bottle at 3 times the price of 3 plastic bottles, there's no reason why I'm going to go for one bamboo bottle. I'm just saying, whereas bamboo is cost effective, it's come for free, there is no cost there. But that kind of a mindset is also there to try and make eco-friendly something which is premium, which is something to try and say, oh, this is something that it's like badge value. It's not about badge value. It's about trying to say it's got to become a way of life as ordinary. And then, of course, we also need to take away certain aspects which, as force of habit, if you have something to lean on, you continue to lean on. You take away that support, then you learn to stand on your own, or you look at it in a different alternative. So that's also another way of looking at things. Thank you very much, Jan, Ravi, Lopamudraji, Charu, Deyanuja, Aditya Thackeray. Thank you very, very much for speaking with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Dushyant ji, बहुत धन्यवाद समय निकालकर हमसे बात करने के लिए. With that, it's a wrap of what has been a very, very engaging session, and I'm sure there will be a follow-through very, very soon. Special thanks to Aditya Thackeray and Dushyant Chautala for joining us on this conversation. Stay with us. The conversation continues on Sustainability 100 Plus.
Welcome to, and I've written it down so I don't mess it up because I'm the world's worst anchor, the Sustainability 100 Plus Summit. I'm told the idea is to go 100 years in the future with sustainability procedures that last forever and ever. 100 years is the beginning, and then obviously we'll, just like you vote for governments after 4 or 5 years, we vote again for the next 100 years. So we've got some very interesting figures here for this panel discussion. I'm going to introduce them immediately, not waste any time. But first, let me tell everybody the standards are very low here. We're not expecting to do anything much. There's no judgment being called. I'm an out-of-work actor, singer, dancer, street vendor. So I'm not the right person to point fingers at anyone. But what we want is a healthy conversation. That's all. So let's say it's almost like one of those English channels at 9, but without the violence. We want a nice, happy discussion. You can shout, scream, have fun, but no anger, no malice, and no personal remarks if possible. But once again, thank you for joining us, because I think right now where we stand in the world, people like you taking a very aggressive stand, so to speak, for sustainability in various forms is the future. Without you, the rest of us make no sense, I think, honestly. So you are the leaders for us to follow, and then obviously the global effort will make some sense. So let me quickly mention, because he came here first, on time, under 11:30. I'm huge about time. In that way, I'm very German and Japanese. Canpac's very own Shailesh Pate. Can we take a look at this lovely man, named after something that has been cancelled for 2 years? We can't go to parties right now. CSR and sustainability is what you talk about. Introduce everyone, and then Shailesh will come. Oh, let's talk to you first. Actually, this will just take too long. So Shailesh, just a quick word. CSR and sustainability. You want to just introduce yourself for those who don't know you, listening to this bit of the program?
Yeah. So I'm Shailesh Pate. I'm taking care of CSR and sustainability at Campac India. I'm in the CSR and sustainability field since last 10 years. Prior to Campac, I worked with Mahindra Group and then Kotak Life and SDFC Life Insurance. But my core purpose is, life purpose is to assist the underprivileged community and to protect our environment through various actions. So I would like to contribute more through these sustainability and CSR initiatives.
So let's meet the next panelist, who is, I think, Amit Lahoti, VP and GM, Ball Beverage. Amit, we have 2 or 3 Amits here today. Lovely thing about
so we need to be careful. This is the school situation, right?
Yeah, I know. You're right. Actually, you're spot on. I had 3 Rohits. Everybody must be in their class having 2 or 3 names which are common, at least in per class. So we had the Rohit problem. So we obviously called one Rohit Senior, Rohit Junior, and they were just 2 months apart. And the third was Mota, because he was just fat. You know how cruel kids can be. So Amit, don't worry. In this place, no one's cruel. We're not going to call people names. Same question. This is the opening question, basically. A little bit about yourself, profile, and personally, what do you do in an individual capacity for sustenance?
No, thank you. Thank you. So I lead, I work for Ball Corporation, which is the world's biggest manufacturer of metal packaging. In terms of my background, I've been with Ball for about 11 years. And what has been the journey of 11 years is all around, the business as such is 140-year-old business, and sustainability is at the core of the business. So that's why I've really, kind of enjoyed the last 11 years being with them.
Now we move on to Saurabh Tillu, who is from Everest Coolers, and let him introduce himself. Saurabh. Hello, Saurabh.
Hello, everyone. My name is Saurabh Tillu. I basically work with Everest Refrigeration, and we are basically one of the key suppliers of cooling equipments to AB InBev here in India as well as global. And my job, basically, I take care of the entire sales and commercial for Everest globally. No, it's not a very fancy job, to be very honest. So it does involve a lot of travel. So we've been supplying coolers and solutions to AB InBev for the last almost 10 years now. At a personal level, yes, a lot of things that we practice at home and in office. Let me come back to the home front. My wife is one of the key drivers because she works with an with a foundation. So we've all got that habit of the 3 R's, which is reuse, recycle, and reduce. So we practice a lot of on these 3 R's at home. We do a lot of composting, which we've started pretty early. We do use a lot of plastic, packets, which we, when we order food, from outside, we try to reuse that wherever possible, plastic or glass. Ideally, we should not use that, but yeah, I mean, whenever you order in, you essentially get all this stuff.
Sort of, let me just interrupt for a second. This is a very happy forum, huh? So don't have to worry about all of us. I think nobody out there can have a completely carbon footprint free sort of situation. So you don't have to worry about.
That's the only thing we do.
Yeah, I know, and I understand that's what we're talking about. The whole idea is to reduce it. I think reduce is the key here. No one is trying to talk about the madness or reaching some mad achievement of being 100% sustainable. That's not really going to happen. That's just a future sort of thing. So please don't worry if by mistake you guys are talking and you tell us something that involves the use of plastic or whatever, because that's the real world as well. It's trying to reduce the situation right now. So sorry to interrupt.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty much, we practice, to be very honest. And since, we have that, in the family, that my wife works with an NGO and a foundation, sorry, and if she's been doing this for the last so many years. That's actually, we've inculcated a habit of that in our family. So yeah, that's mostly that we do, at home.
Okay, so just quickly, while we have you all in the gallery together, Saurabh, what do you think of Amit Lahoti's painting collection behind? I mean, I'm looking at 1 crore, 2 crores, 3 crores, 5, 10, 15, 20 crore kam se kam is my, my estimation.
Actually, I love the paintings. It looks very, very classy. I mean, I don't know, the value, but it, really, really looks pretty classy.
Yeah, doing these Zoom calls and StreamYard calls, I've learned that 2 types of people: those who really spend time at the background and do it nicely. I'm not saying what is right or wrong, or the people people who just keep it blank, like this is it. There's a blank slate.
Like me.
So they seem to be the exactly. Like I think Shailesh and you, and then there's Amit. Again, no judgment. This is just observations, guys. By the way, Amit has just told me or sent me a text saying that he's willing to donate 2 of these paintings to whoever out of the panelists seems to be using the most sustainable footprint out of all. So thank you so much, Amit. And now you've endorsed it, so you can't take it back. You put your thumbs up. We have that. We play that loop. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Saurabh. Let's move to the next gentleman. I think it's Amit Sharma, who's the head of Schneider Electric. Amit Sharma. There he is. Amit, firstly, apologize before we start.
Hi, everyone.
They moved you 3 or 4 times. I tell the production people, when you're doing these things, do not pressurize panelists, because if you give them anxiety, they take it out on me. So those 5 minutes before, they have to be very nice to you. And even if the frame is rubbish, also just leave it. Let the guy be happy. That's more important. But they moved you twice, so I hope you're in a good mood.
But I am very happy because you have just promoted me as a head of Schneider Electric, which is very, very big thing. I am actually
Ma Kasam, yahan pe likha hai, sir. Ma Kasam. I don't know if I can zoom on my camera and show you. It's written there.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So I am heading energy and sustainability consulting business for Schneider Electric. And the best part about my job is, we help people understand sustainability and make them implement actually in their practices. For example, commercial and industrial customers. So very proud to say that Schneider is one of the most sustainable organizations in the world. It has been declared #1 sustainable company. So very proud of it. And we are consultant to AB InBev, where we help them become more sustainable. So yeah, happy to share that.
Amit, ये second innings के जवाब है. Let's go to first innings, which is more about the personal Amit Sharma situation. You've heard Saurabh, the other Amit, Shailesh, they've all mentioned what on a personal level they sort of do. So I think this is the question you'll be asked all the time, guys, going forward. कि घर पे क्या करते हैं? Because everybody knows that you're organizing, and on a macro level, you're doing everything. So on the micro level, what's happening, Amit?
Absolutely. I think generally on a micro level, I won't repeat, like using lights efficiently, switching off lights. the thing, which is more close to my heart is saving water, because I personally believe that belonging to, hills of Himachal Pradesh, and glaciers are not, giving good enough water for our hometowns. So you won't believe it, in my hometown, water comes fourth day. So you have to store water. So it's very close to my heart. What generally I do, I have changed with the efficient water use. So this will give you a good pressure, but it will use almost, 1/5 of the water. So that is something which I have implemented, and I encourage people around me to use every resource very wisely. So I have
Amit,
learned
don't
it from
mind
my
me,
father.
but I don't mind. But I learned in history that one of the Chinese tortures that they used to do on our soldiers also is this using very little water at a time, dropping droplets of water. This is not a joke, actual true story. By the way, it sounds silly now, but they would actually put just drops of water on the soldier to break him in a form of torture, little by little. It's supposed to be mentally very draining. So I just wanted to ask you, what is the capacity of the water when you're having a bath? Like how much actual pani comes out? For example,
So
shower se kya
generally,
force hai?
yeah, generally you take 50 to 60 liter of water if you are using a bucket, or a full-fledged water. But if you are using these showers, they will give you, a kind of sprinkles that will reduce your water consumption to maybe 15-20 liters, which is good enough.
Sir, 50, 60 liters of water in a bucket. I mean, is it a buffalo who's having the shower or a human being? This is too much. I think it's a very good point you brought up. I don't think people need 50, 60 liters of water for a bath. Okay, thank you, Amit. Because of time, we have to quickly get to the other two who are feeling left out. I'm leaving the lady for last, reversing procedure. Ashish Mehta, co-founder of engineer.in, which apparently teaches sustainability. Where is he? There he is. Sir, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then, of course, the same question.
We want to train the next generation of engineers in India and world on sustainable engineering and manufacturing practices. That's the idea. So use sustainable engineering and manufacture to make in India, especially for the next generation. This is actually still in the development phase. We'll probably launch it from next year onwards. And the idea, at least on the personal and the professional front, in terms of sustainability practices, one on the professional front is, basically print on both sides of paper. I actually see many papers, getting wasted, especially, in firms like legal firms, for example, which print dozens and dozens and thousands of paper every day. Print on both sides of paper. It's very important. Use public transport. A railway pass, costs about 315 rupees, from Churchgate to Virar. And if, anyone uses a personal car or, a shared, Ola, Uber, for example, single journey is going to cost more. So it's saving as well as sustainability. And I think the last thing which, my fellow panelists have said, it's reduce, reuse, and recycle. I think that's the important thing.
I mean, I'll ask you one question. So, what if you're a car manufacturer? I think Shailesh spoke about Mahindra and Mahindra, for example. So, then if you're a car manufacturer, you still use the public transport to reach the office, but you're selling the car, which on the other hand is, there's like a paradox.
I think, in the days to come, we would also have electric cars, which are probably a little more sustainable as compared to petrol and diesel. But yes, I think, and carpooling could be the other thing. If there are 3 people traveling.
In the words of Amitabh Bachchan, sahi jawab. Well played, sir. You dodged that one beautifully. It was a short ball outside off stump, but you got under it and let it go through the wicketkeeper. I respect that. Let's bring in Arundhati Kumar, who's been waiting patiently, the founder of Beej.
So I was saying that I spent 17 years as an HR professional before I decided to turn entrepreneur. And in 2020, I just got bored of doing what I was doing and I wanted to do something different. And as luck would have it, my dad has a leather exports firm, which is about 50 years old. So, in Indian families, when the child says, ki, naukri nahi karna, they'll always say, come and join the business. And they don't understand why you were doing a job for so long in the first place. And that's really how it started. And, I always say my business started on a Google search, sustainable alternatives to leather. And it suddenly showed me so much I didn't know about. And I went very happy to my dad. And obviously my dad said, no freaking way am I changing my business. It makes money. So I said, okay, great. So I'll start something of my own. And that's really how we started. We are a 1.5-year-old brand. We work with plant-based alternatives to leather. There is 100% sustainability. I don't believe in that it's even possible. And at least in the fashion space. But yes, we are conscious. We try and reduce impact in whatever we do, and we try and measure our footprints at every step. So that's what I do with Beej. At a personal level, because I know that question is coming, it's very easy for me. I think I just don't shop. And given the fact that we're a bootstrap brand and I put everything into it, I don't have the money to shop. So it works perfectly well. Every time my daughter says, can I buy this? I tell her, listen, I have the business to set up. Paisa nahi hai. So it works for sustainability. It works for me.
That's you sound exactly like my father. Growing up, this paisa nahi hai he was one of those straightforward guys. Everything you ask him, paisa nahi hai. Also,
I
you
am
also ask
telling
him.
you, the only way to be sustainable is to reduce consumption.
Well, first and foremost, do you think we as Indians, I know Schneider is a foreign brand, some of you are, MNCs, etc. But do you think we as Indians are doing enough as compared to foreigners, or are they way ahead of us? And I mean, like the Western world, generally speaking, are they way ahead of us, and are we falling behind, or are we almost there? What's our situation? Anybody can take the.
So,
Yeah.
Cyrus, can I go first?
Please, please.
Okay, so Cyrus, my observation is that, let's say about 20, 30 years back, I think Indian practices, especially in villages, small towns, were much more sustainable than rest of the world. And I'll probably want to give an example here. I come from the desert state of Rajasthan. So, in many villages, small towns, the water never used to, come at home. People used to go and, kind of get water from, let's say, 10, 20 kilometers. Now, this also used to enforce, sustainability and, conservation of water. So, while taking bath, people would actually, collect the water after, taking the bath in a tub, and then they would reuse it for washing clothes. Then they would reuse for, mopping the floor. Now, the same water being used 3 or 4 times. And primarily, the reason was that because, they had to put in that extra effort to get the water. Of course, with the Jal mission and, water now reaching to our household or to our doorsteps, coming in our washrooms and kitchen and everywhere, the consumption has automatically gone up. But of course, there are countries, for example, the Nordics, which are also a great example of sustainability and sustainable engineering, with respect to their innovation in, let's say, wind energy and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'll take it. I have another point of view on it. So basically, when we compare, when America was growing or Europe was growing, they were, consuming and they were polluting everything. As compared to that, as India, when we are at a developing stage, we are doing much better. And again, I second that, Arunti's point of view. We are forced to consume low because we are not, having everyone rich. 70% of the people are poor. So by default, we are much better what, those countries were doing at that particular point of time.
So we need to educate them. We need to create awareness that their actions are responsible for the result of whatever current happening. So that is, I think I would like to appreciate, TV18, Network 18 and AB InBev for initiating this, project so that we can create awareness amongst everyone who are not aware about basics of climate change.
No, what you're saying, I think is absolutely spot on again, because that's what I was trying to tell the guys backstage before we started the show. The whole thing we were talking about is that, it's just too many things to do. So that's the reason why nobody wants to get into it. They just feel that it's just too much. Because ye bijli band kiya to theek hai, ek cheez. But there's so much more. I mean, sorry.
And they also feel that, it's too big a problem. So how does it matter if one person doesn't do it? So everybody's thinking that someone else will come and do it, and, my efforts don't count. I think there are too many people thinking it doesn't count.
That's why we are asking for incentives of, I'm saying from the government, even from private sources, whatever. For example, the Parsi community, because the dwindling community, the Geo Parsi campaign started, where basically if you produce more Parsi children, the panchayat will pay for the education and the life of that child up to a certain point. Of course, the campaign sort of failed, but that's another issue. But the incentive was there, I'm saying. And I just like the idea of incentives to just drive you to doing things.
And Cyrus, I have to say this. I think as people, most people, sustainability has become that. If you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, it's a good thing to do when everything else is in place. So before COVID, even in my society, pre-COVID, there was this waste segregation. There was this, there was that. There were efforts, and you would see it. COVID came. Plastic blew out of proportion. Masks blew out of proportion. Suddenly, nobody's considering that as a crisis anymore. And I'm like, that's a crisis waiting to happen right here. It's coming. So I think as human beings, we are very short-sighted. We're so busy fighting the crisis at hand that I honestly feel the whole sustainability agenda and at least the plastic-free agenda has taken a massive backseat in the last 1.5 years.
But you're right. But if you just look at it, isn't it more local problem? And again, I'm applauding all the efforts you're doing. We've researched all this. You guys have been called here also because we know very well that you're doing all the right things on a much bigger scale and impacting much more. But if you localize it a little bit more per building, yeah, per colony, yeah, per lane, जहाँ पे लोग, as a small collective, sort of look at the plastic issue, for example, the water consumption, the electricity consumption, even things like transport, etc., can also be sort of looked on by a small panchayat. I don't want to use that word, but a small group of buildings in a colony, or even one building at a time. Maybe you think that could be the answer, to go really small? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think this is you have to break the problem down into different halves, and you exactly hit the nail there, right? Just in terms of all of us, if we feel collectively the problem is bigger, unless we break.
Tell us what Mike Tyson would say about it, but give me a Mike Tyson quote, please. Now you set the bar high.
He would say just knock the person down, right? And in this case, you have to just knock the problem down. But the problem is so big that we all have to go to the macro level. And I think a lot of the corporates have started doing it. There is a lot of messaging around it, but I would say a lot of discrete actions being done, right? Recently ABI and our organization announced that we are working with local waste collectors, and there is about 25,000 waste collectors we've partnered with to kind of collect plastic or packaging waste, and in particular beverage cans, which we kind of do. And it's initiatives like this which are going to really help. When I go to Mumbai, I'm not from Mumbai, but I never felt like going to a beach in Mumbai because it was always dirty. It isn't the case anymore. And that is because of granular efforts being made by a lot of people on the ground. And those are the kind of efforts which need to be uploaded every day. I think a lot of the corporates are coming into it, but it has to be a partnership between corporate and the larger public.
At some level, the issue is common. It's we are, not thinking, or we are not serious about climate change. The action needs to happen now. It has to be government, it has to be individuals, it has to be corporates. And the biggest change needs to be on the education awareness side. We need to make more and more people aware, and then, face it, or, do actions around that awareness.
Shailesh, let's start with you. Just a quick word on what you guys are doing now as a corporate, what you are doing in terms of, I think, bottling.
Yes, sure. So we believe in a continuous improvement process, and at plant level, or in all our plants, we have installed solar panels, and in manufacturing capacity, we believe in recycling and reuse of raw materials, or reducing of raw materials. So we have NNPP technology, wherein we have reduced significant raw material consumption, because raw materials are something which is indirectly or directly impacting your GHG emissions. So that we are continuously doing it. Then at community level, we are working with the rural farmers, water conservation related initiatives. So that all things are continuously happening. And we believe in reuse, recycle, that is 3 R's of sustainability, so that we can reduce, whatever raw materials we are consuming. And, from grain to glass is old expression in the brewing industry. And I believe all the stages of this brewing industry, right from crop production in agriculture to the container from which it gets consumed, all these stages are emitting greenhouse gases. And as a supplier, or as a contributor to this, we all should contribute as a joint initiative, and try to reduce GHG emissions at each level, right from your inbound, outbound logistics, then packaging, agriculture. So if we all come together at one platform, then we will do wonders in this sustainability space.
Wow, so everybody's coming back to the 3 R's. That's what is it? Reduce, recycle, and remove. No,
Recycle,
reuse. The fourth R is RCB. They're out of the IPL, so I didn't bring it up. I want to get into that. Arundhati, you started with the whole idea of sustainability and then try to build a business. So you want to tell us how that's going and a little bit about that whole effort?
Yes. So in fact, when I was listening to all the other panelists, that's what I was thinking, that, Beej is different in two ways. One is our entire business was based on this thought of being sustainable. And secondly, we're a very tiny business compared to some of the businesses right here. But so two things we do, Cyrus. One is, like everybody else said, awareness. So for me, it's very important to tell people, hey, what's the difference between vegan leather and plant-based leather? Vegan is not always sustainable. Little things, little myths that I didn't know 2 years back. What happens when there is this whole movement saying leather is bad. I have to tell people, hey, leather is not necessarily bad. So, there are so many things that we try and raise awareness on. One of the things we obviously try and do is, like I said, reduce impact. So, our linings are recycled, our zippers are recycled, our packaging is completely plastic free. So wherever we can, and to me, it's like a journey. I don't think you can go from 0 to 100 in a day or a year or 2 years or 5 years. You're constantly upping the game. You're constantly seeing what else you can do. The other thing I always tell people, and I tell my clients, I think that's why I don't make a good business person. I tell them, buy less, buy well, but buy better. Buy things that will last you longer. So instead of looking at the price tag and saying, hey, it costs 2,000 rupees, quickly do the math. How many times can I use this bag? Can I use this bag for 2 years every day? Okay, so let me divide it by 700 and see what that works out to be as a number. If that makes sense to you, then buy it. Otherwise, don't. So, like I said, I don't think we make much money as a business, because I always tell people, don't buy it if you don't need it. But I completely believe in that.
But Arundhati, that comes back to your dad and my dad's philosophy, which I think is very good. They're protecting us in a way with a paisa nahi hai. Maybe you should start a new startup company called Paisa Nahi Hai. No, because from that philosophy, almost you're trying to tell people the 3 R's. It comes out of that. It's almost like, conserve. There's a conserve to that. And sometimes conservative thinking is not wrong also. Listen, you guys have been fantastic. It's been a great, I'll say this without sounding like some cheap flattery. I really believe that India, the best of India, are people like you. And I feel really bad that sometimes the papers are filled with, the glamour side of India or other politicians and etc. and people who are supposedly movers and shakers. But I think the real desi greatness lies in people, the leaders like you, who are doing things. So hats off. I shouldn't take it off because I have a bald patch now, but hats off to all of you and really well done. And thank you for chatting with us.
Well, the IPCC report on climate change should be of a grave concern for all. The planet's surface temperature is rising and the consequences are already visible. India too is witnessing a deadly climate change event, and if solid steps are not taken now and fast, we will witness even worse catastrophic events. In this view, it is important to collaborate, join forces against climate change and achieve UN Sustainable Development Goal by 2030. Now, to achieve these SDGs by 2030, every stakeholder matters, especially our states. Now, every state has to end sustainability at all levels of governance. The states have to involve different ministries, departments, corporates, NGOs, and also civil society to identify these problems and solutions to achieve desired results. In this discussion, we will delve into the blueprint towards SDGs, how they will deliver on commitment made to people. This is in partnership with AB InBev, and this is our Sustainability 100 Plus campaign that we are talking about.
In fact, to discuss this something very important, we have with us our panelists, Mr. Prabjot Singh Sodhi, who's the Senior Program Director, Circular Economy at Center for Environment Education. We have Divya Tiwari, who's the Principal Scientist and Advisor at SAHAS. We have Anusuya Ray, who's the Vice President Corporate Affairs at AB InBev South Asia. We have Gul Pinag, who's an actor and entrepreneur and works very actively in this particular space. We have Supriya Sule, who is the Member of the Parliament. And we have Sayukta Samadar, who's the IAS and an advisor for SDGs with the Niti Aayog. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and discussing this. This is the need of the hour, and we have to take steps towards it. So thank you so much for joining this important discussion. Mr. Sodhi, let me start with you now. A lot has been done and a lot still needs to be done. So how do you view India's progress as far as UN's Sustainable Development Goals are concerned?
Well, good morning to everybody, and thank you, Sonal, for bringing me on the Sustainability 100 Summit. Now, I would like to answer your question in three ways, really. First, India is a very diverse country, and the fabric of democracy gives a lot of exchange of ideas, which is the core of how we can bring these UN Sustainable Development Goals within the system. This also gives us a good, healthy spirit and options and choices to score them to benefit the masses. Now, if I have to tell you what is the progress in the 17 goals and so-called 170 or 69 indicators and targets, Niti Aayog is the central ministry, as you rightly said so, and they are marking the states in the development. And many of the states are scoring good over the period of time. And you see the score of 70 against 100 to be achieved till 2030. States like Kerala, Goa, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, one of the hilly states, and Punjab and others are going faster. But probably the focus needs to be more on the social, economic, and environmental progress. So therefore, the point which I want to really highlight to you, the last point, is that we as citizens have also to play a role. Firstly, these sort of debates which you are holding today is one of its kinds, which is very important. And I think so, when we say citizens, we also include other stakeholders, which include scientists, the UN agencies, the media, of course. And I think so it's very important that the media brings it to the fore, both the press and the visual, and we bring the sensitivity to the citizens for creating responsibility or being responsible to address these goals. You see, I'll just close it by saying that littering has still not stopped. We are into 75 years of our independence, and it really hurts me to see the littering going all over the place. We may go in the best of the cars, but the banana peel is thrown outside the window, and we keep lowering the window. How we are going to achieve this is not by debates alone. We will have to put some legal instruments around it and bring a real strong method, as we are trying to see in the domain of the car seat belts,
So, Ms. Tiwari, let me come across to you on this. When we talk about waste management and circular economy, where do you think India stands there? Are we really efficient in the waste management process? This is something that has been a big part of every debate that we've been talking about.
Yeah, good to see the focus on waste management. Since Swachh Bharat Abhiyan also, there have been a lot of efforts which have been taken at national level or at municipality, panchayat level. The statistics look quite bad. India generates about 62 million. This is as per 2014 report, 62 million tons of waste, which could be today 100 million tons of waste annually. Of this, as per Pollution Control Board, we only collect 70% of it. And of this collected waste, only 30% is getting processed. Now, these are official numbers. A lot of it doesn't include what is getting generated in remote localities, in rural areas. Typically, the estimates are lower. So just looking at from the waste management perspective, the numbers are not very optimistic yet. But India is doing well on certain parameters, especially if we look at that the recycling rates, in India, when we look at European numbers, they look poor, but many of the European and US numbers are high because they had been exporting their waste. US had been exporting 95% of its recyclable waste, and EU was also exporting something on similar scale. We extract 3 times more resources per acre compared to the average in the world. So look at where we are. We are generating, we extract more water compared to any other country in the world. So we are at a very precarious situation with respect to resource consumption. So that needs to be looked at.
Absolutely, more awareness needs to be created, and that is what we are here for. So let me take this across to you, Ms. Ray. Both of them have spoken about how responsibility lies with the consumers, it lies with the producers. AB InBev is doing phenomenal work that we've been talking about in Maharashtra, be it Karnataka, Telangana, Haryana, and other regions. Can you elaborate? What steps are you taking towards sustainability? How are they aligned with the state sustainability development goals that we've been talking about?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Sonal. And at Avian Bev, our purpose is to bring people together for a better world and a world which is thriving, which is healthy communities, etc. So as a result, our goals in the organization, the sustainability goals in the organization, are aligned to the United Nations sustainability goals around smart agriculture, around water stewardship, around circular economy and packaging, and of course climate action. So if I am to elaborate, on all the four, or five pillars that we work on, I would say across the states that you mentioned, Haryana, Telangana, Maharashtra, etc., we have focused a lot on all these initiatives. If I can start with Haryana, we are working very closely with the farmer group, around barley crop and cultivation of it. There are advisories, who are there, who are constantly advising these farmer groups on good agricultural practices, how to increase their yield, use water, use of, the right set of fertilizers, etc. And not only to just to increase the yield of the product, but yield of the product in a sustainable way, which is not harmful to the soil, and also, increase livelihood options for these farmers. Now, if you look at, water stewardship that we're doing in, again, Haryana, Telangana, Maharashtra, what we have done is we've already reduced our water footprint by 40%, totally. And also we have impacted about 40,000 lives across, creating watersheds and trying hard to work with the state to see how can we conserve water, the groundwater, and what is the process that we follow is reverse osmosis, the right process. So how do we do that? So we are constantly working on those water stewardship initiatives. Around circular economy, I would emphasize that we are a glass bottle industry. So again, how do we look at the glass bottle supply chain? What are the efficiencies that we can bring on board? Is there any use of digital technology to, to track that supply footprint? How do we bring it more of the circular packaging and the part of it? And therefore, in many areas, we have shifted to shrink wrap, etc., so as to decrease the using of, decreasing the using of plastic, etc. And around climate action, I would just like to focus on the renewable energy pact that we all have among the breweries that we have in India. Across our breweries in Maharashtra, in Mysore, we have shifted a lot of action, towards renewable energy, and they are powering our brewery footprints, etc. So I would say overall, we are focusing as an organization on these four pillars and working strongly towards it.
Ms. Sule, Maharashtra has been seeing the impact of climate change. There are floods. We have been talking about how this particular phenomenon is impacting the state and in one of the worst ways possible. What kind of measures are you taking to combat climate change? What is the way forward?
No, I think these are very, very extraordinarily challenging times. And what we are trying to do is one big program that we are doing is talk about water conservation at all times. Means you have to save every drop or reuse every drop. And the other big program that we are focusing ourselves on is plantation. Plantation drives everything. Anything you want to celebrate, first plant a tree. Take ownership of trees, plant them, nurture them, look after them. So I think these are two big things that we're trying to do. And second is about air pollution. That's something we are constantly talking about, trying to make sure that plastic is banned in any many places which are public places for us. So this is really what we're doing at very basic but at ground level in a very effective manner.
Ms. Samata, this question is for you. Niti Aayog recently released the SDG index. You've been doing it for a bit now. What is your prognosis as to how states are performing, what more needs to be done? Just give us an update there.
So yes, Niti Aayog is, the nodal agency with the mandate for supervising the SDGs in the entire country. And secondly, also for localizing the SDGs, which means taking it from the global level to the national to the local. Under this mandate, we had started this journey of creating the SDG India Index way back in 2018, and now we released the third edition of the index of 2021 in June. I'm very happy to say that it's the most comprehensively, it documents and ranks the progress of all our states and union territories towards achieving these SDGs. As you know, it's a very complex development framework, which cuts across the social, the human, the economic and environmental dimensions of development with around 17 goals, 169 very interconnected targets. And this index has become the principal and official tool for monitoring of the SDGs in India. And I'm very happy to state that the United Nations headquarters, in its latest World Sector Public Report on the SDGs, very recently released in September 21, has really acknowledged and appreciated India's SDG localization model and also the SDG India Index. So going a little detail on the index, the index covers 115 indicators across all the sectors of development that one can think of in 16 out of the 17 goals. And the country's overall performance, it's very heartening to see that it has improved from a score of 60 in 2019 on a scale of 0 to 100 to 66. And this positive stride, we can say, has been very largely steered by the tremendous progress that the country has seen in sectors such as clean water and sanitation, largely with the expansion of the Swachh Bharat mission, the Jal Jeevan mission, the drinking water improvement, the sanitation, and again in clean energy, because of the expansive coverage of clean cooking fuel through the Ujjwala and also through household electrification program of the Saubhagya. So apart from these, these are largely the areas where India has progressed majorly, apart from also the life on land and sustainable urban habitat. Now, if we talk about urban habitat, the entire urban management has also improved largely because of the housing, the urban housing under PM-AY Yojana. Again, the waste management, resource efficiency things, and the tremendous strides that have happened. When we come to the states, now definitely some of the states which have been consistently doing very well is Kerala, Himachal Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, who are the top rankers. But also we have to talk about, some states who have really made a tremendous incremental progress from 2019. So there we can see states like Haryana, Uttarakhand and Mizoram have been the top gainers and the fastest movers from 1920 with an increase of 12, 10, 8 points. So that's a major substantial increase. Again, a good news is that not a single state we find in 2020 in the red category, which is the aspirant category. All our states which were in red in 2018, like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Assam, they had moved on to the yellow, the front runner, the performer category way back in 2019 itself. But what is good is that 12 additional states, Uttarakhand, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Mizoram, Punjab, Haryana, Tripura, and union territories, they have graduated again from the yellow to the front runner category, which makes it to the green category. So now we can see a consistent, because of the spirit of competition that the index has led to among the states, we see a tremendous amount of rush to improve and the outcomes, particularly the SDG outcomes. So yes, that's it.
That is really heartening to know. And this is at the corporate level, this is at the economy level. We've been doing a lot and we've been talking about it. But Ms. Panag, let me come across to you, because at the micro level also a lot needs to be done, and you are one of those who is doing it. You are making changes towards sustainability. You switched to electric car. You have this mantra of reuse and recycle as far as fashion is concerned. How important is sustainability to you? What are the other ways we in normal life can make these changes?
I think sustainability and development shouldn't need to be oxymorons. I think sustainability and development need to go hand in hand, and there are adequate examples in place for us to see where they do go hand in hand. Speaking of micro level, I think it's a sense of responsibility towards what you do and what you have in your environment. It's important to appreciate the fine balance between the ability to and the resources to acquire more versus the need to actually use them. I think with regard to fast fashion, we're an industry that's sort of hurtling towards consumerism, where we are being made to buy things we don't need. And I think at a micro level, sustainability starts there. Do you really need all the things that you end up buying? And if that's a question you ask yourself each time you're about to make a purchase decision, I think we will make a more responsible and a more sustainable decision. That's as far as general consumption goes. I think switching to electric for me was really a no-brainer. I've been driving an electric car for 6 years as my primary vehicle of commute. And not only is it low on emission, but it's also great fun to drive for somebody who's an auto enthusiast. But a lot of naysayers will say that today electric cars are being charged by dirty power, read thermal power. Having said that, I don't think there is a way to contest that today. But in the years to come, India is going to be the largest producer of clean energy. In fact, the statement made by Mr. John Kerry that says that it's the cheapest place in the world today to put up a solar plant is India. India is going to add over 100 gigawatts of solar power in the next year or two. The completion date was 2022, but I'm assuming there are some delays on account of COVID. So this government is doing a lot with regard to renewable energy. And there will be a time very shortly when a majority of our power will come from clean sources. So I think keeping the electric argument aside for the moment, I also want to make another point. States can do a lot. Ultimately, the SDGs are going to be implemented by states, and that's how it should be. Because unless the process is decentralized, we're not going to see results. I'll give you a small example. Delhi state saw an incredible amount of flooding this year. There were very, very low-lying areas that saw a significant amount of flooding. People had homes, people had water in their homes up till the knee level. And interestingly speaking, a study was done which traced the source of that water to the manner in which construction nearby was done, and how the construction material wasn't adequately disposed of, blocking natural drainage waterways, resulting in incredible waterlogging around, for example, the area that I'm speaking about, Nizamuddin East. So it's also really important to keep in mind that construction today needs to be sustainable. Punjab is an area where every square foot of agricultural land is contested and sought after and fought over. Where I'm from in Punjab, Fatehgarh Sahib, our work with our foundation has essentially been to try and reclaim those waterways. There are natural drainage waterways all over rural India, but because they've been encroached upon mostly for agricultural purposes, and now increasingly due to urbanization, the rainwater doesn't really have a drainage system. Cities, of course, have stormwater drains, and they are planned in most cases, but the real challenge is what happens to fields and agriculture produce when there's waterlogging in the fields. And that's directly a result of unplanned development, which is so easy to check because of the decentralization of the power structure right down to the panchayat level and then block, tehsil, and district. So I feel there is merit in decentralizing the Sustainable Development Goals and making the lowest level of government, which is the panchayats, accountable for their implementation, because they are the ones who get impacted the most when there is a catastrophe. For example, fields get waterlogged when water doesn't drain, which is a direct catastrophe because it impacts their livelihood. So I know the conversation was supposed to be micro, and I've kind of taken it towards a macro space and brought it back to micro, because governance needs to be at a decentralized level, and that's the only place where we can really start the implementation of measures that are going to check climate change, because climate change is real. Climate change has arrived, and unless we take a lot of cognizant steps in the direction of trying to reverse it, we are going to be staring at catastrophe after catastrophe in the years to come.
One section of the society which is the most vulnerable is farmers. So what steps are being taken by the government to ensure that there's productivity as well as sustainability?
What we have done is, first of all, the minimum support price is something very, very important that you need to keep working on. And the other thing which is very important for us, what we are doing is, there are Krishi Vidyan Kendras all over the country. And one of the best in the country is in Baramati. So what we have done is we have engaged all our mobile phones with to the Kishi Vignan Kendra of all the farmers. So when to sow, what to sow, when are we expected rain, when do you expect something like torrential rain to come, what actions can you take, or if you can preempt some absolutely exponentially different situations. So how can we save whatever crop? We can't save the entire crop, but is there something we can do? We're looking at helping people through drip irrigation. So we're trying to mitigate all these things that are available through the Krishi Vignan Kendra as the head, and using technology to help all our farmers.
Let us talk about the key challenges that these states are facing. Where are they lacking? What has been your assessment from the report that you just released?
Okay. So definitely, when I said things like the improvements in clean water, sanitation, in energy, there are definitely some areas in which the country is not doing so well according to the index. And very intuitively, it says goal 2, which is nutrition, goal 5, which is gender equality. And again, some challenge areas we see in goal 4, which is education, and in industrial growth, which is again industry innovation infrastructure in goal 9, and decent work and economic growth, goal 8. So let me talk about one by one. So you see in nutrition, again, a challenge area with a score of 47, that's a red. So that's again in the aspirant category. The big challenge areas are largely, which almost all states in India, particularly in the northern part of the country, are facing, is the tremendous amount of, anemia among pregnant women, anemia prevalence among adolescents. So anemia among pregnant women is a staggering number of 50%, almost 50%. Then again, the problem of the incidence of stunting and wasting among children who are under 5. This is somewhere around 36 to 38% in the country overall. So these are some challenge areas, definitely, which not only the country is facing, and obviously most of our states are also going through the same challenge. Again, in terms of gender equality, the goal 5, which captures basically, the performance and the participation of women in the political sphere, in the economic sphere, decision making, access to resources, and also safety in society. There we see a challenge area again for the entire country with a score of just 48, again in the red area. So largely the factors are, very low. The labor force participation rate, if we see, of women compared to that of men, that is again a problem area in the country. Again, women's ownership of land resources, agricultural holdings, that is a measly 13% in the entire country. Women's participation in the political sphere, in the legislative assemblies of the states, in the center, that is also one of the challenge areas. So these are broadly the big ticket items, which lead to a problem in in nutrition and in gender. Again, if we see the entire sector of education, which is goal 4, there are tremendous challenges which states are facing, particularly in the learning outcomes, the quality of learning outcomes that students are supposed to get in class 4, in class 5, and class 8. That's again a problematic area, apart from the fact that as we go higher into secondary education, the enrollment ratio dips down. It's just around 50%. Again, if we go to further higher education of that 23 years of age group, which is college and postgraduate, that's even further lesser. So the quality of our educational outcomes, particularly in the schooling system, and the dropouts in the higher secondary and higher education, I think that are some of the challenge areas, particularly if we talk about education. However, I would also like to, state that there, from the index, what we can see, there's a huge variance across the country. So we have all the 5 southern states are in the top 10, are in the top 10, and 4 of them are tied with joint ranks in the 3rd position. So you can see that most of the southern states are in the top 10 and very much tied up. On the other hand, we see that the states in the northeastern region, the 8 states of the northeastern region, with the exception of Sikkim and Mizoram, they find themselves in the bottom half of the state ranking. So these are definitely some of the challenge areas, which states have. I told you about the sectors. And apart from that, I think pandemic has obviously led to a lot of obstacles and created a lot of challenges, particularly in the economic goals of decent work, economic growth, with the kind of impact it's had on livelihoods, and also on industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So goal 8 and 9 we see from our findings is that these are also critical areas, both in terms of digital connectivity, physical connectivity, and also in terms of the contribution of manufacturing to employment, better employment standards. So what we've done so far is, what we see the challenges in the states are largely in terms of the capacities of adopting, implementing, and monitoring the entire SDG framework within their policy setup. So that is where we've undertaken, and also definitely another big challenge is our suboptimal statistical systems. Now, you must understand the SDGs are very comprehensive and they are intertwined, they're interlinked, and it's a huge set of outcomes and targets also that we are talking about, almost like 115 indicators we have in our index, and there are 169 global targets across all sectors. So the challenges which states face is largely, the inadequate statistical systems, because we do not have very high frequency data, reliable data, which goes granular to the level of the districts. And that's what we are trying to address through our engagement with the states. So we have been working with all states, in fact, all our state governments. And I'm happy to say that we've done these workshops in 23 out of all the 28 states in the last 4 months itself, in sensitizing, in building capacities, in hand-holding the states to understand which are the problem areas, which are the priority and high focus areas which comes out from the index for that particular state, and what are the action plans that can be, made to bring in more of a horizontal convergence across ministries, across departments, in order to address these gaps to achieve these outcomes on a very accelerated basis.
You have a foundation which is working on efforts of bringing about change, be it, you spoke about reclaiming waterways, you also work on gender equality, and climate change is also one of the subjects that you work on. Tell us what kind of work has been done, what more needs to be done, and what are the kind of challenges that you face when you work on these plans on a daily basis?
So one of the 17 SDGs is working towards gender equality. And the core work that we do at the foundation is essentially in the area of gender equality. And you'll have to bear with me as I tell you a little story. It's a very short one, but it's poignant because about 11 years ago, I was sitting with the district commissioner of Fatehgarh Sahib, and we got chatting about something, and he mentioned something which shook me to the core. In 2010, as per the 2001 census, Fatehgarh Sahib had the lowest sex ratio in the country. When I heard that, it shook me at a level that I didn't think anything was capable of shaking me up. Because to me, to see that the place that I hail from, the district that I hail from in Punjab, has the lowest sex ratio, while I'm out there, the picture perfect, emancipated woman, poster woman, as the media would address me often as, it broke me at a fundamental level. And that was the trigger point for me to set up the Kushum Sher Singh Foundation. And one of the first things we started with is having a conversation about something like this. A negative sex ratio doesn't happen by accident. It's done deliberately and by design. So the first conversation that one needs to have in a society is to address the elephant in the room, that there is a huge issue with children being allowed to be born, and why. The challenges that one faces in a place like this is people don't want to have these conversations, Sonal. So the first step that anybody needs to make in the area of gender equality, to be specific, is to have a conversation, because you can't discuss something which nobody wants to talk about. The first step is a discussion. Maybe there's dialogue, maybe there's debate. Only when it becomes a talking point can you really do something about it. I mean, of course, gender is one of the key 17 SDGs. Having said that, the climate change impact on day-to-day lives at the micro level that I spoke about earlier is very real. Cities don't really see the brunt of climate change because Often in urban areas, you are within air-conditioned environments. You have limited access to the outdoors because you go from home to offices. It's at the farming level and at the rural level that the impact of climate change is instant because, like I said, it impacts your livelihood, not just in terms of waterlogging and things if the natural drainage channels are blocked, but in terms of what the crop goes through. If there is an unseasonal rain, if there is unseasonal heat, if there is unseasonal hailstorm, it destroys the crop. And speaking of crop, I think one of the other things we do a lot with the Kisan unions is talk about how we can make agriculture more sustainable and actually advocate the reform that we need. For example, in Punjab and Haryana, the water table has fallen dramatically over the last 20 years on account of growth of rice. And the question that really needs to be asked, which is belling the cat, is should Punjab and Haryana be growing rice? So these are important conversations that need to be had, without which one can't address the SDGs. And since this is at the state level, since agriculture is actually a state subject, although we could be forgiven for thinking otherwise in recent times, the states must take the lead in sorting this out. It's not sustainable for Punjab and Haryana to continue to grow rice at this rate. And then in order to get the 20 quintal plus yield that comes from each acre in both Punjab and Haryana, which is almost 70% higher than other states of India, and about close to 35 to 40% higher than the next closest state in terms of yield, which is Madhya Pradesh, is because we are pumping in so much fertilizer and so much pesticide in order to get that yield. Now, this is something that the state government must address. And the onus is really on the state government, decentralized to the block level and eventually to the panchayats. So the important conversations to be had are these uncomfortable conversations. When you start having these conversations, there will be discussion, there will be debate, and eventually people will be receptive to the idea of change. But you can't thrust change down, whether it's in gender, whether it's with regard to reclaiming waterways, or whether it's regard to sustainable agriculture. But the starting point is having a conversation, dealing with all stakeholders, and then moving forward. So the precursor to any change in society, for anything, including but not limited to sustainable development goals, is discussion, dialogue, and debate, and then change will surely follow. Change will be adopted.
Tell us more about the policies and the programs that you have put in place in order to ensure that we fight climate change.
See, there are big changes which can be done at a national level and state level, and there are some steps we as citizens need to take. I mean, if we're going to chuck plastic everywhere, do illegal construction everywhere, block all our nalas, and this doesn't only happen in cities, this is happening in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well, because it's just, you look anywhere and you see multi-story buildings everywhere. So is really this the solution? So I think we need a two-pronged theory, which is one is what citizens' activities and one is what government should do. And what government should do is maybe help people understand, make them aware, bring in some legislation for plastic, for plantation and usage of water. And we as citizens really need to be responsible and not waste any of these natural resources and nurture them, value them, because that's the best gift we can give our next generations to come.
This, of course, is the decade of action. How do you think we can take these SDGs from a local level to global level?
So this is what we are, and this is what we do in NITI Aayog in terms of working with the states to make the SDGs an integral part of their own policy environment, an integral part, and also customizing it to their different contexts and realities. So in a country with so much of diversity as India, where things differ, the development trajectory differs from every state, and within a state also, we see so much of inter-regional disparities and so much of intra-state disparities as well. So this has been one of the biggest challenges, and we are up to that challenge of how does one localize the SDGs given the kind of diverse context that we are talking about. Definitely our mandate has been to localize the SDGs, and who best in this but our partners, particularly the state governments. And we've been working very intensively with the state governments, as I just said, 23 physical workshops, meeting chief ministers with the meetings being chaired by chief secretaries and the entire government. That's a lot of having the commitment and the stakes of the highest policymakers in the state towards the SDGs. I think that's a very positive signal and a very positive tribe that we've created. So definitely the first thing is, the premise is we have to bring the SDGs to the policy table in the states, and we have to foster a tremendous spirit of competition. So early on, when 2015, when the SDGs were adopted by our Honorable Prime Minister, the perception was that SDGs is something very alien. It's a global concept. It's a global agenda. It's a United Nations agenda. But when we take it to the states and when we kind of show them how it disaggregates and how it translates into our own development priorities, we are talking about giving proper education. We are talking about good educational outcomes. We are talking about good nutrition. We are talking about health, reducing the out-of-pocket health expenditure and giving health facilities at a better level. So it cuts across, and it's very much aligned to our own development priorities. Yes, it will differ from state to state. The needs in Kerala would be very different from the needs in Uttar Pradesh or in Bihar. The priorities would change. So that's how we work with individual states. So what we did was we tried to, first of all, how does one bring to the attention of our state policymakers that the SDGs are important? That's when we developed the SDG India Index. And that ranking of states, that led to a huge spirit of competition among the states over the years. And we've seen that every time the index comes out, it leads to a lot of discussions and a lot of meetings and brainstorming in the state government from the level of the chief ministers and chief secretaries. So I think that's a very positive sign that we were managed to do. More so also in terms of how did we take it? Yes, we helped the states and we worked with the states to develop their own SDG institutions, SDG focused institutions like SDG coordination centers in several states like Karnataka, in Uttar Pradesh, in Haryana, in Punjab. And apart from the institutions, then which are dedicated to creating that policy environment, creating that intersectoral, thematic kind of policies, programs, and then also monitoring them. So apart from these institutions, then we worked with the states towards creating their vision documents. I'm very happy to say that 26 out of the 28 states have already aligned the SDGs in terms of creating SDG vision documents and action plans. 26 states have already created these SDG cells or SDG coordination centers with under different names or under different terminologies. Again, the mapping document and everything. I mean, mapping of the SDGs to their state schemes, that has been done on almost all states. So the next thing was taking it down to the monitoring has to be taken down to the level of the states and the districts. That's where we tried working with the states in terms of developing the state indicator framework. So you have to have a common set of parameters on which the state will start, measuring the performance of all their districts, which are again the smaller administrative units. We have around 700 districts in the country, and for every state to develop a district indicator framework and then finally do a dashboard and then monitoring the progress of the districts on each of these sectors. That's a mammoth challenge, but we have been able to do this around in 19 states, and almost 10 states have developed their own district level dashboards. We also, we went also one step ahead, and we also, NITI Aayog also, from here, we developed the 120 districts ranking and measuring of SDGs for all the 8 states of the Northeast, and we just released the Northeastern Region District SDG Index, which is again a milestone for an organization and a country like India and an organization like NITI Aayog, where we have the mandate to go to the sub-national level, but we went one step further because of the various capacity issues of the small states in the Northeastern region. So having done that, obviously capacity building is, I think, one of the biggest ways in which we can take it down to the local levels. Again, state governments several state governments, as I mentioned, have done a tremendous amount of work. So we can see, budget linking. So state governments link their budget to SDGs, and this has been done pretty well by around 10 states, Assam, Karnataka, Haryana. I don't want to get into the names, but several states have followed their trajectory in linking the SDG, financing, the budgeting process with the SDGs as well. Apart from that, definitely, I think one of the big ticket areas where SDGs have to be brought in is basically, it's not only by creating a whole of government approach like we've tried to do in terms of associating and partnering with every level of government, whether it's the district, the state governments, there's the district administration. Now we are also working in terms of the cities, urban local bodies, in terms of how can they integrate the SDGs in their policy making, in their program implementation. But what is also important is to take into account the entire, the civil society and the private sector, which are huge, huge sectors. And that's where we are now working in terms of how do we make it move from the whole of government approach to a whole of society approach, wherein we bringing our partners, the civil society organizations, and also the entire sector of private sector into the SDGs.
Ms. Ray, then let me come across to you. I'm trying to understand, what kind of policies do you need so as to ensure that corporates go ahead and there is sustainability? What will help you cement your green efforts across India from a corporate level and from your own company and group level as well?
I think the kind of policies that we need was discussed very extensively in this group. What we need is some directives from the state, from the center, which encourages the private corporations like us to invest more into these sustainability initiatives, So look at water, the way we are using water in India. And as one of the panelists mentioned, there is a reduction in water tables, etc. Then how does the government have those policies which supports private corporations to work on these initiatives? Similarly, on solar energy, on renewable energy, there is so much of dichotomies which exist between the state legislations, between central legislation. So how can we kind of enable, how can the state and the center, work together to give us policies which kind of encourage people and the organizations like us to have, to work on these frontiers, to have more solar panels in our manufacturing sites, to work for the green energy that we want to work for. I think the policies need to be, and the regulatory barriers, needs to be removed, So therefore, a lot of, I will come back to my point on education, which needs to come, very strongly in India, to the regulators as well. I'm sure the civil society is trying to do something. Our consumers are telling us that we need to use a more sustainable technologies, etc. Our corporations are trying to do that. But I think regulators need to be also educated that there is a great need to do all these things, to have some good policies. I think we have come a long way to that, but I think there's more to do on those levels.
Oh, absolutely. Educating them, of course, one of the biggest steps. Then we need to also have a lot of discussions and create more awareness there. Gul, that brings me to you. What is your message as a person who's working towards these SDGs, to the think tanks, to the government? What more needs to be done? What is already done that you think can be developed further?
So I have two messages. One is that the government needs to step up and incentivize clean technology more. I'll give the example of electric vehicles because I consider myself an electric mobility advocate. Okay, let me try a diplomatic way of framing this. As a country that aims to be the largest user of electric vehicles, we have the least subsidy and incentive in the world. Europe, UK, China are far ahead of us as far as incentivizing and subsidizing. I mean, people consider subsidy a bad word, but I'll choose the word incentivize instead. Incentivizing adoption of electric mobility. And when one has a conversation with the government, I'm on various advisory groups where one has had these conversations, the response really is that once demand picks up, supply will pick up, and therefore stuff will become cheaper. Electric mobility involves technology that's expensive today. So unless and until there is an incentive from the government, it's not going to be adopted. The OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, also have no incentive to push it beyond a point because they can't keep operating at losses. I think we need to adopt a lot of what China is doing. China today is the largest electric vehicle market, and we need to learn from what they've done to make faster adoption of electric vehicles. So incentivize. There could be lots of incentives. They don't need to be they don't need to be restricted to no registration fees and greater depreciation. They can be in terms of you getting a certain percentage point off on your income tax rate. I mean, there are lots of incentives that can be done, which can really push people towards adopting these measures. The government can also step up and incentivize manufacturing to somehow prioritize the reuse, remanufacturing, refurbishment, and recycling loop. A lot of brands are already doing it, but they're doing it from a marketing standpoint. So you'll have a lot of brands say, bring your old clothes to us, recycle them, and then buy these clothes from us. So I think consumerism can also be used very effectively to push the agenda of a circular economy. Especially where there's fast consumption, there is an adequate loop in place to make sure that that same fast consumption and consumerism can be reverse engineered to encourage recycling, refurbishment, and remanufacturing. But of course, all of it ultimately needs to be incentivized. And incentives also need to be reimagined. Incentives aren't all about giving subsidies. Sometimes you incentivize people through innovative measures. As somebody who is very passionate about electric mobility, I think there is a plethora of interesting incentives that can be given to those who adopt electric mobility, which are not just about lower GST and no registration fees, which is something that has just about come out across the country now. No states will charge registration fee for an electric car, which brings it down by almost 10%, because typically registration today costs between 8 and 10%, depending on which state you're registering your car in. A few states were giving that incentive of no registration, but that isn't an incentive enough to bridge the gap till the stage where electric technology can compete with internal combustion engines. So I'm using electric technology and electric mobility as an example of what the government can do more to incentivize and think of innovative incentives that really push people towards the agenda, because that is really where it's going to happen. The OEMs are ready, the people are ready, but I think we need to see the government make a real push in terms of imaginative incentives for people to adopt and make sustainable development goals a way of life.
Absolutely. In fact, you did speak about incentives. Maharashtra has been one of the states which has taken some steps forward. Of course, a lot needs to be done. There is a possibility of a performance-linked incentive scheme for electric vehicles. What is your final word as to what must be done by the government and the think tanks?
So our demand, our mantra is step up. So S is for standardization. You need to standardize material usage. Today, plastic is just categorized in 7 categories, but the amount of additives that are added to it, there are hundreds of them. So do you really need that many kinds of plastic colors, which hinder reuse and recycling? So standardized products and packaging. T is for taxation. As we said, higher taxation for products and packaging not aligned with circular economy, and lower taxation for items which are aligned. There are some very good frameworks already available. Ellen MacArthur has a very good framework which can be adopted by countries. It's an open source framework. E stands for entrepreneurship. As I said, there are very good business models which are evolving around economy, which is called shared and rental economy, which is around remanufacturing. These will generate jobs and meet the goal of our country where we need to have jobs. And P stands for public engagement.
We have to look at the long-term benefits that all these initiatives are getting us. Okay, at the start, maybe the investments would look huge, but just look at the long-term benefits and the kind of impact that we would be making as responsible organization to the environment. And look at our consumers, our customers, they're all asking us, asking the companies as to what we are doing in terms of sustainability initiatives. And, we just don't want it to be an ad hoc approach. There has to be a long-term approach and a long-term value-driven kind of an approach. And something that I personally really like is a scientific data-driven kind of an insight that every sustainability program needs. I think we are in the business of creating value, creating economic wealth for everyone, for all our stakeholders. And that will only happen when we as responsible corporations, take up, issues, take up initiatives that are impacting our business and and impacts a large set of consumers, customers, and partners and vendors that we work with.
I'd like to simply add that I think we need to put our weight behind trying to make sustainable development goals and the circular economy trendy and fashionable.
And definitely, all of you are adding on to it. So thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a great discussion and great takeaways from this very nice argument or discussion. In fact, I would say the 3Ds that we've been talking about that we had today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us on the last day of the 100 Plus Summit. I'm Ezgi Barcinas, Chief Sustainability Officer for AB InBev, and I've been with the company over 8 years. Today, I'm happy to share with you an overview of our approach to sustainability, as well as key strategic pillars we put in place. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our company, we operate in nearly 50 markets, sustaining over 5 million jobs globally, with about 50 million consumers buying our products daily. And we keep that global scale and local reach in mind in how we show up in our communities every day and how we design our programs for supply security, business continuity, and community resilience. Our beers are almost entirely sourced, brewed, and enjoyed locally, which deeply connects us to the communities where we live and work. We're building a company to last, and when you couple our diverse and global reach with our local focus, you see why sustainability isn't just part of our business, it is our business. And if you look at our entire value chain, you'll see how at every touch point from seed to sip, we invest in building vibrant, thriving communities, a healthier environment, and a resilient value chain. Our sustainability strategy is a reflection of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and we are working to contribute to broader sustainable development. We're an engine for local economic growth, and we could proudly contribute to sustainable development, whether it's how we improve the livelihoods of our farmers, enhance water availability and quality for our communities in high-stress areas, or how we champion the transition to a low-carbon economy, invest in road safety and green logistics, or how we strengthen micro and small enterprises across our value chain. And these are just to name a few. As I mentioned, sustainability is our business. At the core of it, sustainability is about supply security and business continuity. But when you think about it, raw material sourcing, water availability, these are very local issues. It's also about our employees, seeking that sense of purpose, sense of pride. We always say our greatest strength is our people. Sustainability is a genuine concern for the modern workforce, and not only critical for talent attraction, but also for talent engagement and retention. Thirdly, with the rising conscious consumerism, we're seeing consumers are asking more questions about environmental and social impact and turning to their favorite brands to step up in authentic, purpose-driven ways. And we witnessed this trend for years. Our Stella Artois brand has spearheaded this internally and externally since 2014 through their partnership with water.org to provide water access to women and families in need. And more recently, our Budweiser brand has championed our corporate efforts to switch to 100% renewable electricity by launching a campaign in Davos at the World Economic Forum 3 years ago, and by continuing to tell the story of our commitment to a more sustainable future with one of the most successful and commendable Super Bowl ads in 2019 in the US. Last but not least, sustainability is about innovation. It's about the future. We know we need to think about the future of agriculture, the future of packaging, the future of logistics in our efforts to build a company for the next 100 plus years. And this allows us to remain ambitious, differentiated, and competitive. As I always like to say, sustainability is the ultimate design brief. So if you think about it, sustainability is in fact doing what we do better, whether it's sourcing the highest quality ingredients, being efficient, resourceful, and effective with our resources, or embracing new technologies and innovation. As the world's leading brewer, we remain firmly committed to creating a better world for all our stakeholders while also creating value for our business. So when we set out to refresh our sustainability strategy in 2017, following the SAB integration, we brought together over 70 of our colleagues from around the world to create our next set of public commitments. Colleagues from all of our 6 operating zones across procurement, supply, which is our operations team, logistics, corporate affairs, and R&D teams came together to identify the most material issues and the biggest opportunities we had to create value across our value chain. 4 pillars, agriculture, water, packaging, and climate, are core to our sustainability strategy, and we've taken an outside-in approach in every one of these goals. This is evident in our farmer-centric approach to smart agriculture, our focus on communities' water availability and quality in high-stress areas, our commitment to protecting and promoting our two-way packaging, which is arguably the largest circular economy in the world, and our efforts in climate action in how we're transforming local grids through additional renewable capacity. We're making great progress towards our commitments, building programs and partnerships, and holding ourselves accountable with clearly defined KPIs and an assurance process as part of our integrated reporting. So let's take a closer look at our 2025 sustainability goals, which are aligned with the UN SDGs across key pillars of smart agriculture, water stewardship, climate action, and circular packaging. Smart agriculture focuses on improving the farmers' livelihoods as we work to upskill, connect, and financially empower our farmers. We're investing in agronomic guidance and remote field-level advice in order to improve farming practices, lowering our environmental impact while improving farmer productivity. We're investing in climate modeling and predictive analytics so that we can better forecast risks and opportunities in our sourcing regions, making progress on our regenerative agricultural efforts by building out our global approach to soil health with partners like the Nature Conservancy. Water is the #1 ingredient in all our products, and more importantly, it is a critical resource for the health and well-being of our communities. That is why we've taken an outside-in approach in our water commitment to ensure 100% of our communities to have measurably improved water availability and quality in high-stress areas. This has enabled us to drive accountability, as well as what some stakeholders may have called a sector-leading agenda in water stewardship. Representing a commitment towards the development goals of ensuring a sustainable consumption and production, we have several initiatives under circular packaging pillar, and we're working to reduce waste generation and emissions by protecting and promoting our returnable bottles, investing in local supply chains, recycling supply chains to improve recycled content in our packaging, to scale social impact alongside environmental impact across our circular packaging programs. But perhaps most importantly, climate change remains the most pressing challenge facing society today. And AB InBev's initiatives under the climate action goal focus on championing a low carbon economy through a science-based target in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway to reduce our absolute operational emissions by 35% by 2025 against the 2017 baseline, including sourcing 100% of our electricity through renewable sources. We're also committed to reducing our emissions across our entire value chain by 25% in the same time frame. We're working to bring additional renewable capacity in every market we operate in, continuing to electrify our fleet and championing new technologies and innovations everywhere possible. But we know we can't do these alone. We've launched a sustainability dedicated supplier collaboration platform named Eclipse, where we're working together with over 50 of our biggest suppliers to set a shared vision, identify gaps, and collectively decarbonize. We believe this collaborative approach will help drive sustainable emission reduction within our shared value chains for years to come. Beyond partnership with suppliers, through our 100+ Sustainability Accelerator program, we also collaborate with entrepreneurs, innovators, engineers, and scientists who are working to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. Our award-winning 100+ Accelerator, launched in 2018, continues to deliver strong results. We've created this to be an open platform to support promising ideas and technologies to help tackle some of the world's greatest challenges. We're driven by our purpose of bringing people together for a better world, and will continue to invest in local supply chains and communities because we believe the future is local. We hope to lead in accelerating the private sector's integration of sustainability and finance with the recent launch of a global $10.1 billion sustainability-linked loan revolving credit facility that reinforces our commitment to sustainability. We are constantly looking for ways to design for resilience and build long-lasting change, and we remain committed to the principles of the UN Global Compact and the UN Sustainable Goals to creating a better world for all our stakeholders. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everyone. I welcome you all today to the signing ceremony between Ball Beverage and AB InBev towards supporting the can collection initiative. We are very excited to partner with a company like Ball Beverage and be associated with them in one of the sustainable initiatives. I now invite Ashwin Kak to give a brief note on this partnership and this initiative with Ball.
Thanks, Sugandha. I won't take much time, but what I would like to focus on while we move on to the other participants here is what really is this partnership about and what is the essence of this partnership. So I think most importantly, the point here is this is two like-minded organizations getting together to create tangible impact in the space of sustainability. And although the initiative per se talks about increasing the recycling, increasing the returnability of cans in general, sort of hand it over to Amit now, who can talk much more about what this initiative would be.
No, thank you, Ashwin. Really good, and it's a great occasion. We've been talking about this partnership for a long time, and as two organizations, and the words which you use, like-minded, is very much at the forefront of how we see sustainability. Ball has been an organization which has been around for 140 years, and really the sense of why the success of 140 years for us comes from economic, environmental, and our social performance. And each of those pillars are equally important, and those are pillars for our sustainability goals. And as we look at sustainability, ESG and all of those buzzwords are getting into boardroom discussions now, but for Ball, and I know for ABI as well, this has been a core pillar of our success for many years, already for many years.
I now want to invite Ganeshan, who have been crucial in the entire partnership discussion, and maybe he can shed some light on initiative that Ball have started through this pilot of Ganeshan. Over to you.
Hi, thanks, Sugandha. In fact, it is a great moment for all of us. In fact, we are embarking a journey towards spreading awareness on how the consumers and general public could become part of the true circular economy. In fact, Ashwin and Amit have already mentioned about the commitment what ABI and Ball have been doing towards the sustainability goals.
Thank you so much, Ganeshan. I request now Amit and Ashwin to mark this moment and initiate the signing of the partnership between Ball Beverage and AB InBev, supporting towards this amazing beverage can collection initiative.
The signed off agreement with me, the new virtual ways.
Thank you all. So now, since we are partners and we would progress towards achieving more such goals, more such initiatives, and expanding this collaboration further to other areas also, hopefully. I now invite Amit to give a closing note on how does he feel with this partnership and what is his vision towards this partnership going beyond.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sugandha. Really delighted that we have been able to sign this agreement MOU today, and we move forward, right? There are things being executed on the ground, and I really look forward to both Ball and ABI teams visiting some of these facilities together and looking for ourselves how we are empowering lives of waste pickers. And sometimes in corporate moments like this, I think bringing the life of the people who are actually doing the work on the ground for us and really empowering them is really what I look forward to. So thank you once again, and congratulations to the team.
नमस्कार. सर्वप्रथम सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट
दुनिया को एक बेहतर भविष्य देने के उद्देश्य से आयोजित इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में बातचीत करने का अवसर देने के लिए मैं आयोजनकर्ताओं को और विशेष रूप से नेटवर्क 18 का धन्यवाद ज्ञापित करना चाहता हूँ। और साथ ही साथ मैं धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूँ इस अवसर पर उन सब लोगों का भी जिन्होंने किसी न किसी रूप से प्रत्यक्ष या परोक्ष में अपनी सहभागिता इस महत्वपूर्ण सम्मेलन में सुनिश्चित की है। मित्रों, हम सब जानते हैं कि 2015 में यूनाइटेड नेशंस ने दुनिया की आने वाली पीढ़ियों को बेहतर भविष्य मिल सके और वर्तमान में जो डेवलपमेंट हम करना चाहते हैं वो सस्टेनेबल हो, इस उद्देश्य को लेकर के दुनिया के सभी यूनाइटेड नेशंस के सदस्य देशों ने 2030 तक ऐसे 17 लक्ष्य संकल्पित किए थे जिनके आधार पर हम डेवलपमेंट कर सकें। सार्वभौमिकता और सर्वस्पर्शी डेवलपमेंट हो, नो वन इज़ लेफ्ट बिहाइंड, कोई भी पीछे न छूटेगा, इस उद्देश्य के साथ में हम डेवलपमेंट करें। ये निश्चित रूप से इसने पूरे विश्व के सामने एक नया मार्ग प्रशस्त किया और डेवलपमेंट को एक नई दिशा दी। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में भारत की सरकार भी 2014 से लगातार इसी संकल्पना के साथ कि हम जो कोई भी विकास का कार्यक्रम लें, चाहे वो क्लीनर फ्यूल हो, चाहे वो हाउसिंग हो, चाहे वो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हो, चाहे वो सैनिटेशन हो, हम 100% लोगों तक उसे पहुंचाएं और कोई भी पीछे न छूटे, इस लक्ष्य के साथ में हम काम कर रहे हैं। मित्रों, मुझे जानकारी दी गई है कि आज जो ये कॉन्फ्रेंस आयोजित हो रही है, इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में लोग जलवायु परिवर्तन से लेकर के विकास से जुड़े हुए सारे विषयों पर एक साथ बैठ कर के विचार करेंगे। और मैं विश्वास करता हूँ कि इस तरह के कॉन्फ्रेंसेस से, इस तरह के समिट से, इस तरह के सम्मेलनों में जो विचार साझा किए जाते हैं वो निश्चित रूप से कहीं न कहीं देश दुनिया को आगे बढ़ने के लिए एक नया मार्ग प्रदान करते हैं। मित्रों, हम सब जानते हैं कि जो 17 सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स तय किए गए थे, वो सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स लैंगिक समानता, जेंडर इक्वलिटी से लेकर के और सैनिटेशन फॉर ऑल, ड्रिंकिंग वाटर फॉर ऑल, हेल्थ फॉर ऑल, बेटर फ्यूचर एंड क्लीनर एनर्जी, क्लीनर फ्यूल्स, इन सब के साथ बात करने के साथ साथ में हमारे जलीय जीवन, एक्वाटिक लाइफ को और साथ ही साथ में हमारी फ्लोरा और फोना, इन सब का बेहतर संरक्षण और सुरक्षा हो सके, इस दृष्टिकोण से हमें एक नई चेतना और नया लक्ष्य प्रदान करते हैं। जैसा मैंने कहा कि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में जिस तरह से देश की सरकार काम कर रही है, यदि हम देखें तो भारत ने पिछले वर्षों में जिस गति के साथ में काम किया है, सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स के लक्ष्य को अचीव करने, उनको प्राप्त करने की दिशा में, न केवल भारत के परिप्रेक्ष्य में अपितु पूरे विश्व के परिप्रेक्ष्य में एक अपने आप को एक शक्तिपुंज के रूप में, एक प्रेरणा के स्रोत के रूप में अपने आप को प्रस्तुत किया है। यदि मैं सैनिटेशन फॉर ऑल की बात करूं, 2030 के लिए लक्ष्य विश्व के लिए निर्धारित किया गया था और उस समय जो आकलन किया गया था वो आकलन ये कहता था कि 100 करोड़ लोग जो ओपन डेफिकेशन के लिए अभिशप्त विश्व भर में हैं, उसमें सबसे बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूटर भारत है और लगभग 60% हिस्सेदारी भारत की है। 60 करोड़ लोग भारत में सामान्य सैनिटेशन की, शौचालय की सुविधा न होने के कारण खुले में शौच के लिए अभिशप्त हैं। लेकिन मैं आज प्रसन्नता के साथ में ये बात कह सकता हूँ कि जिसे सबसे अधिक काम करना था, उस देश ने सबसे अधिक गति से काम किया और 2030 से 11 साल पहले 2019 में भारत ने अपने आप को, हमारे यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के मुख से, उनके श्रीमुख से अपने आप को ओपन डेफिकेशन फ्री घोषित किया। न केवल हमने सैनिटेशन फॉर ऑल के लिए काम किया, अपितु माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में 2019 से लगातार हम प्रत्येक घर को पीने का स्वच्छ जल मिले, इस लक्ष्य के साथ में भी काम कर रहे हैं। जल की उपलब्धता और आने वाले समय में इसके कारण से होने वाली चुनौतियों को दृष्टिगत रखते हुए प्रधानमंत्री जी ने 2019 में एक एकीकृत मंत्रालय, इंटीग्रेटेड मिनिस्ट्री, जो पानी और स्वच्छता से जुड़े हुए सारे विषयों पर एक साथ हॉलिस्टिक अप्रोच के साथ में काम करे, इस दृष्टिकोण से एक नए मंत्रालय का गठन किया था और उसे जल शक्ति ऐसे मंत्रालय का नाम दिया। मैं आज प्रसन्नता के साथ में कह सकता हूँ कि पिछले 2 वर्षों में उन्हीं की प्रेरणा से, उन्हीं के मार्गदर्शन में हम जिस तरह से आगे बढ़ रहे, तमाम विपरीत परिस्थितियों के होते हुए भी पिछले लगभग 2 साल के समय में जब जल जीवन मिशन देश में लाल किले के प्राचीर से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने घोषित किया, देश के 19 करोड़ 23 लाख घर में से केवल 16-17% घरों तक पीने का पानी नल के माध्यम से पहुंचता था। आज कोविड की चुनौतियों के होते हुए भी पिछले 2 साल में हम 5 करोड़ से ज़्यादा नए घरों को कनेक्शन प्रदान कर पाए हैं। और केवल कनेक्शन देना ही नहीं, सस्टेनेबल सोर्सेज हो, रेगुलरिटी हो और क्वालिटी का पानी मिले। हमने क्वालिटी, ड्रिंकिंग वाटर क्वालिटी के दिशा में भी देश में एक नई विचार क्रांति का सूत्रपात किया है और देश भर में जिले के स्तर पर, राज्यों के स्तर पर, ब्लॉक के स्तर पर ऐसी एक्रेडिटेड लेबोरेटरीज बने और उसके साथ साथ में प्रत्येक गांव में फील्ड टेस्टिंग किट्स के माध्यम से भी रेगुलर सप्लाई होने वाले वाटर की क्वालिटी का टेस्टिंग हो सके। इस दिशा में भी नए मानक तय किए हैं, नई व्यवस्थाएं बनाई है। और मैं ये मानता हूं कि जिस तरह से स्वच्छता का आंदोलन पूरा होने के कारण, उसका प्रथम चरण पूरा होने के कारण जिस तरह से देश के आम आवाम के जीवन में परिवर्तन आया है, न केवल जीवन में परिवर्तन आया है अपितु उन्हें आर्थिक रूप से भी एक संबल मिला है। आज बीमारियों में कमी आई है। वाटर बॉर्न डिजीज़ के कारण से होने वाले खर्च से देश के आम व्यक्ति को मुक्ति मिली है। और ऐसे विभिन्न अध्ययन इस बात का आकलन करते हैं कि लगभग 50,000 करोड़ रुपया प्रति परिवार प्रति वर्ष से ज़्यादा बचत जो है वो देश के परिवारों को होने लगी है। और मैं विश्वास के साथ में कह सकता हूँ कि जिस तरह से हम अब ड्रिंकिंग वाटर क्वालिटी पर और ड्रिंकिंग वाटर अवेलेबिलिटी पर काम कर रहे हैं, ये भारत की प्रगति में और भारत के सामान्य मानवीय के जीवन में एक निश्चित रूप से बड़ा परिवर्तन लाने वाला समय आने वाला है। लेकिन साथ ही साथ में क्योंकि आने वाले समय में दुनिया में पानी को लेकर के चुनौतियां बहुत बढ़ने वाली हैं, ये पूरी दुनिया के लिए चिंता का विषय भी है और पूरी दुनिया में चर्चा का विषय भी है। तो इसीलिए अब समय की मांग है कि पूरे विश्व भर में हमें वाटर यूज़ एफिकेसी पर काम करने की आवश्यकता है। और भारत के लिए तो चुनौती और भी बड़ी इसलिए है क्योंकि हमारी अंडरग्राउंड वाटर पर जो डिपेंडेबिलिटी है वो दुनिया में सबसे ज़्यादा है। लगभग हमारा 70% डिपेंडेबिलिटी जो है वो हमारी 65 से 70% वो भूगर्भ के जल पर निर्भर है। ऐसी परिस्थिति में जो भूगर्भ के जल संसाधन सिकुड़ते जा रहे हैं उनको रिचार्ज किस तरह से किया जा सके, रिप्लेनिश किस तरह से किया जा सके ताकि हम लॉन्ग टर्म तक उनको सस्टेनेबल बनाए रख सकें, इस दृष्टिकोण से भी काम करने की आवश्यकता है। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में हमने पूरे देश भर के एक्विफर्स का स्टडी हो उसके लिए काम करना प्रारंभ किया है और देश का लगभग 2/3 हिस्से का हमने एक्विफर मैपिंग भी किया है। नरेगा के माध्यम से, जल शक्ति अभियान के माध्यम से, 15वें वित्त आयोग के द्वारा प्रदत्त धनराशि के माध्यम से हम अपने वाटर रिसोर्सेज को किस तरह से सस्टेनेबल बना सकते हैं, एक व्यापक तरीके से देश भर में इस पर काम हो रहा है। लेकिन इसी के साथ में अब समय आ गया है कि हमको सप्लाई साइड पर मैनेज करने के साथ साथ में डिमांड साइड को भी मैनेज करने की आवश्यकता है। और डिमांड साइड मैनेज करना मीन्स जुडिशियस यूज़ ऑफ वाटर। जो कोई भी पानी उपयोग में लिया जाए वो विवेकपूर्ण तरीके से उपयोग में लिया जाए और जो कोई भी पानी उपयोग में लिया जाए उसको रिसाइकल करके बार बार उपयोग में लिया जाए। एक बूंद पानी बचाना और एक बूंद पानी रिसाइकल करके वापस उपयोग लेना, ये पूरे वाटर सिस्टम में 2 बूंद नए एडिशन करने का काम करता है। हमको अब डिमांड साइड पर भी काम करना होगा और वाटर यूज़ एफिकेसी को भी बढ़ाना होगा। पानी का सबसे ज़्यादा उपयोग क्योंकि एग्रीकल्चर में होता है, एग्रीकल्चर में भी हमें पानी के उपयोग और उसकी उपादेयता, उसकी प्रोडक्टिविटी और यूसेज दोनों को रैशनलाइज करने की आवश्यकता है। हमें क्रॉप्स का डाइवर्सिफिकेशन करना, ऐसी क्वालिटी जो है क्वालिटी या इस तरह की सीड्स पर जाना, इस तरह की क्रॉप्स पर जाना जो कम पानी में उगाई जा सकें, इस दिशा में बहुत तेज गति से धरातल पर काम करने की आवश्यकता है। और मैं ये मानता हूँ कि इस तरह की परिचर्चाएं, इस तरह के समिट्स, इस तरह के सम्मेलन जो होते हैं वो तकनीकी में दक्षता तो लाते हैं लेकिन साथ साथ में इस विषय को, ऐसे महत्वपूर्ण विषय को एक जन आंदोलन में के रूप में परिवर्तित करने का भी काम करते हैं। एक सेंस ऑफ अवेयरनेस समाज में बनता है, समाज के लोगों में बनता है। और जब नेट टीवी चैनल के माध्यम से, विभिन्न ब्रॉडकास्टिंग प्लेटफॉर्म्स के माध्यम से इस तरह का विषय आम जनमानस में जाता है तब निश्चित ही ये एक जन आंदोलन के रूप में परिवर्तित होता है और जब आम जन इन सारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज़ को, कि बरसात के पानी को, बूंद को बचाना, हर बचाए हुए बूंद के पानी का संरक्षण करना, संरक्षित पानी का विवेकपूर्ण उपयोग करना, उपयोग किए हुए पानी को वापस रिसाइकल करके उपयोग करना, जिस समाज इस दृष्टिकोण से सोचना और समाज इस तरह का दायित्व ले, उसके माध्यम से सफलता प्राप्त हो, ऐसा उदाहरण हम सब के सामने सैनिटेशन मिशन में जिस तरह की सक्सेस भारत ने अचीव की है, ये पूरी दुनिया के सामने भारत ने दिखाया है। एक रोल मॉडल के रूप में भारत माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी के नेतृत्व में उभरा है। मैं कल्पना करता हूँ और विश्वास करता हूँ कि आने वाले समय में ये जो वाटर टू जल और हर घर नल और नल में जल, हम इस लक्ष्य की प्राप्ति के साथ में दुनिया में एक नया कीर्तिमान स्थापित करेंगे। दुनिया में भारत को एक बार फिर भारत को दुनिया को प्रेरित कर सके, ऐसा अवसर जो है भारत को प्राप्त होगा। ये भारत यशस्वी बने और आपकी ये कॉन्फ्रेंस भी जो है वो सक्सेसफुल हो, इसके लिए मैं आप सबको शुभकामनाएं देता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
Platform summit that we've now been running for almost the full part of this year. We have with us someone who's of it, and he's been referred to at different times as a reformist, as an innovator, as an entrepreneur. His stupa has figuratively traveled across the world and inspired many people. The person with us right now has also played a very pivotal role in setting up a campus which runs completely on solar energy. So without giving you any further hints, I'd like to call upon Sonam here with us. And Sonam, just one top point for us here, and something which all of us think about, your Operation New Hope. I think it has given us a lot of, with the private sector or different NGOs, like, we want to learn more from you from that perspective. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of how our Sustainability 100+ platform has also been running important for different stakeholders across different segments with probably different approaches, but all working together towards that final objective. So I leave that first question with you to get your inputs on how you think
Ashwin, I think it's always very wise to involve early the people who you are going to work with and for, and then they become on your side, on the solution side of the line, rather than remain on the problem side. It makes total sense, particularly in democracies, you know, where people finally prevail. It's people's moods, people's thoughts that the system reflects, from elected leaders down to, you know, bureaucracy. It will be not using the process of democracy, and definitely very weak. And
that's a very important point. In fact, through all of our experiences in the sustainability space, we often hear of the word beneficiary, and a lot of us sort of take a step back when we hear that, because you're not really doing this so that someone can benefit, right? And that's a very important point that you also raised. On that particular note, I'd like to get your inputs now on a lot of the sustainability champions like you who have been featured on this platform over the better part of this year. So if you look at one aspect of how technology and digital enablement is helping the farmers, we've had two of those cases that we saw on our platform of Kisan Hub and Fasal, where you are actually enabling farmers, and again, not looking at them just as beneficiaries, but you are trying to solve a problem for them. Like, we as corporates also can look at, okay, there is an association that we want to have in terms of working with certain barley farmers, but then the ultimate objective is not just to procure that barley from the farmer, right? Because you need to look at what and how that farmer will benefit. How do they need to know more about irrigation, pest control, water management, and all of those things? So how do you think technology per se can enable the farming ecosystem? What is your opinion and perspective on that?
Yeah, with the growth of technology in every aspect of life, I think farming is no different, particularly farmers who are often left, out of the system. They just remain the producers whose products then others play with. It's very important that we penetrate into these villages where they are to truly empower them, and empower them in two ways, I think. Firstly, by informing them, empowering them, equipping them, arming with knowledge about all the things about their own products or how to improve them, and then empowering them with the power to choose where to sell, where not to, and knowing what their product is worth, and demanding true worth of their products. In short, bringing out of exploitation, which used to be very common in the dark ages, where farmers or people were not informed, they wouldn't know, they had all kinds of insecurities and threats, but no power to know. So knowledge is power is truly now possible thanks to technology, and this must touch the most important part of our life on this planet, the farmers who actually grow the food that sustains us. And I think it's a very good approach to involve them and empower them in all possible ways.
What is the message that you would like to leave with sustainability champions in general, like these ones that we just talked about? What is that one message that you would like to, I would say, leave for those social entrepreneurs who are in this space?
Well, I think entrepreneurs, social or business entrepreneurs, both, your initiatives will last the longest if you really solve a problem and not just focus on the bottom line, the profits, and so on. So do always focus on the impact and the solution that you provide to real felt needs. Then income is a byproduct. It will flow in. Even if you don't want, there'll be people chasing you if you really solve a problem that the people face. So and ecological solutions now will become more and more the need of the hour, the cry of the people, as we see more and more cracks in our glossy dreams about modernization. There are too many cracks, and ecological initiatives as entrepreneurs bring will be truly appreciated and will almost be a self-selling proposition as people move into more and more challenges, which unfortunately is happening.
On that very important point of the cracks in the system that you talked about, I think one crack which is very evident for us right now is the pandemic that we all are still going through. It's still not completely subsided. So if you look at, and there have been a lot of conversations on this, on what we have learned from the pandemic, what we need to change as a process as we move forward. For you, someone who's lived sustainability, also implemented it in a commercial perspective, and is also inspiring so many other people. What is it that you look at the topmost learning from this pandemic that we are just going through? What will we need to change in the way we live our lives, to rebuild better, as we are calling it? What would be your perspective on that?
I think I learned two things that I would like to share. One is that we human beings should be more wise than clever. There's a difference between cleverness and wisdom. Cleverness is like monkey intelligence. You do this, you do that, you jump around and shout and jump for everything you can do and you try doing. But wisdom is not doing everything you can do and doing what will finally result in good things for generations, and not just because you can make a green horse or a blue sheep, you go and do that and create more problems than you started with. And that's when we have problems like the pandemic, when we fiddle with everything in nature. You play around with viruses and so on. Whether we did it purposely or not, it's not very clear, but in either case, it's because of our clever mind. Now, that can be big if you just look at this figure, 4 million people in 2 years or so. But look at the other side. What we as human beings, in our quest to modernize and industrialize and urbanize, what we have done to the other siblings of ours who are in the wild, our wild life on this planet has been eliminated by 58% in the last 50 or so years. Our lifestyle, this modern lifestyle, thanks to that, 58% of the wildlife in nature has been eliminated. And this is from WWF, reliable sources like that. So on one hand, we mourn about 3% of infected people, which comes to 4 million people. But on the other hand, we ourselves caused the complete extinction of 58% of the other beings on this planet. Now, if we think that this planet does not only belong to human beings, it's shared by other siblings of ours, the deer and the antelope and the rabbits and the bees and the birds, then ask them, how has human beings been to them? You know, from their eyes, I would think we are the biggest virus that has caused so much violence against them. So we have to rethink our impact on the planet, their right to life, the right to life of the animals in the wild, who are less than half today compared to 50 years ago. This, the virus didn't do to us, thankfully. So we should also introspect about our own role as a much bigger virus to the rest of the planet. This is what I'm compelled to learn from this experience.
What is it when you look at the space of sustainability and environment preservation or ESG, which are different words to refer to the same action which is being taken, but when you look at that space, what do you think needs to happen to transform the mindset? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that question is because a lot of times what we see is that a lot of innovations, which for decades and centuries probably didn't take place, whenever there is a complication which comes up in terms of international trade or policies, and some country or some set of companies in some country have to innovate, suddenly there is a Pandora's box of innovations which opens up. So from that perspective of us starting to innovate so much when we are pushed to the brink, like, do we always need to be pushed to the brink to start innovating? That would be one of my questions. And the second part of that would be, how do we transform our mindset to proactively start innovating? Not wait for something to almost reach a point of no return and then for us to start innovating. What's your perspective on that? How do we change that mindset?
I think innovation thrives in that pressure and challenge. When you are close to the brink, you have to, then it happens. As they say, necessity is the mother of invention. Now, in the environmental front, we have been artificially protected by government policies, which makes us think that we have not reached that brink, and that is a very misrepresentation of the reality. So people say, I can go on with these plastic bottles because glass is uneconomical. Well, little do they know that if you pay the price of plastic and what it does in the oceans to the other living beings, or in the land to fields, or microplastics to human health and the health of the soil, if that price was included on the tag, then it would be so much costlier than the other alternatives that you would have to innovate to get out of it. But because we are protected with, you are not taxed for the damage that plastics do, you are actually paying a false price of just extracting petroleum and making the plastic, which is the least of the cost, smallest of the cost. The real cost of plastic is in curing or in undoing the damage that it does, that is what is making us, falsely feel that we are still within that. So therefore, government policies have to be more realistic so that people have to pay the real price. And for that to happen, I think it is awareness among people. When there's enough awareness among a critical mass of people, then the governments in a democratic system sense it and make amends, because otherwise they know they'll become unpopular and will be, pushed out. So people have to be aware and empowered to make governments change their policies. I think these conditions of being on the brink and close to collapse is already there. We only have to show it and make it payable. That will make them innovate.
But if you look at it in a way of how you look at corporates, and what would be your message to corporates in general when it comes to circular packaging or the circular concept of an economy? What is it that you think corporates need to do different also, irrespective of the policy? Because I'm now looking at it from, if I am working in AB InBev, where we are working on these sustainability initiatives, what can we also do much better? Like, think beyond compliance as we talk about it within our organization, think of the larger repercussions. So what would be your assessment of that?
So regarding corporates' responsibilities, I think there are two kinds of corporates: the kind that looks at their business long-term over generations, truly, offering solutions to people, and the other kind which looks at just profits for the moment, fly-by-the-night kinds, which people don't respect and which don't also last long. So I won't talk about them. I would talk about those that want to play their role responsibly, should look at long-term, so that they don't end up killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. You go on for much longer in your business, and any such corporate definitely has policies, and many of the good ones have policies even before law requires them. Laws follow them. So I think I have biggest respect for such corporates that take proactive action rather than waiting for some laws to come and then chase them. Now that's the best of the corporates. For the other kind, I think it has to go with individuals, citizens, because if citizens are unaware, then governments are unaware, and these shady kind of corporates have all the field to play. If citizens consider themselves, in a democracy, doubly powered, one is their voting rights at the time of elections, very powerful gift that we have. But the other that you can do every day, you vote every day, every hour, is your wallet. Your wallet is a voting device. You patronize corporates that take care of people, that take care of their employees, that take care of the environment and the planet and the long-term benefits. You patronize them, and not those who may be a little cheaper, but at a much bigger cost.
Thank you. That's a great input from you to look at it holistically also. So just one final question to you. What is the final message that you would have for everyone who's listening to the Sustainability 100+ platform, all of the audiences which are tuning in right now? What would be your message to them to sort of live sustainability, embed it into their lives?
As I always say, please live simply, so that all other beings and people like us in the mountains simply live. So we have to live simpler lives, but at the same time, intelligent lives. It doesn't end with just you choosing sustainable products over not so sustainable, but you have to also connect with other like-minded people, organizations, be a part of movements towards this, and become a pressure, become a voice for the governments, because they listen to and bring changes only when they see enough number of people wanting change. Otherwise, their priorities are always with what has people behind. So be the people behind. I think be responsible personally, but also collectively, you must not forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonal. Music to our ears in terms of collaboration and partnerships that you are talking about. Exactly the purpose of this Sustainability 100 Plus. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the Sustainability 100 Plus, the Action Manifesto. Well, you've been hearing from some of the most innovative minds on critical elements, interventions, and solutions on how to ensure sustenance to the planet that we call home for 100 years and beyond on the Sustainability 100 Plus in partnership with AB InBev and Network18. As many of you already know, that there has been remarkable work done on this mega campaign, and various action points and conversations have been initiated. With this summit, we have brought closure to the last year's dialogues, but the action does not and cannot stop here. Sustainability 100 Plus, the Action Manifesto, is a very important task for us. And to sustain, the pun intended, these conversations and to testify the work done, we have launched the Sustainability Report for our communities and sustainability campaigners. And for that, I'm joined by Mr. Ashwin Kak, Head Procurement and Sustainability, India and Southeast Asia, AB InBev. So Mr. Ashwin, could you take us through the Action Manifesto?
Thank you, Ruchira. So just to summarize for everyone else's reference, the Action Manifesto is supposed to be a compendium of key thoughts and actions which have been discussed over the course of the entire Sustainability 100 Plus platform, starting right from the panel discussions, moving to the roundtables, and even the very wonderfully insightful masterclasses which have happened. So these have a two-pronged approach over here. One is to obviously get into action mode those motivated stakeholders, but most importantly also to motivate a lot other stakeholders who are not yet activated but could in fact create a lot of impact in terms of the area of influence and the area of work that they are in.